radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. That's right. Today is Monday, March 5th, 2018, 64 days into the new year. Just 301 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? It's good to be back in the chair. Love Mondays. You know what Mondays mean is that we've got a brand new week right in front of us on Fade to Black. And what a great week we've got lined up. I'm so excited about what we're doing this week. Tonight, Riz Virk is here. Been wanting to do a show to help set the record straight on Bitcoin, crypto, blockchain. That's what we're going to do tonight. We've got a lot to talk about. He is the best. So that's what we're going to do tonight. Tomorrow night, Matthew Ryan joins the show for the first time, and we're going to talk about his abilities, healing, other dimensions, and his contact with ETs. That's tomorrow night. Wednesday night, another first-time guest, Marina Jacoby, is here, and we're going to talk about nanotechnology, quantum computing, parallel realities, and the ET tech that is going to change our world. And that is Wednesday night. So excited about that. Thursday night, another Fader night. John Rappaport, No More Fake Newsroom Live, followed by Open Lines all night long. So there you go. What a great week on Fade to Black. An amazing week that we had last week, too, as well. That AMA, Billy Carson. What a week last week. And so to follow that up with what we've got this week, it's just, stupendous. We're walking around on air here. Just love doing this show and hanging out with all of you each and every night. You can follow us. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Simple, at JChurchRadio. Facebook, YouTube, everything is Fade to Black or Jimmy Church Radio, Game Changer Network. You know what to do. Just go over to the website. Everything about this show is at jimmychurchradio.com. So you're going to get all of the, follow, like, subscribe stuff. You're going to get all the bios on each of our guests and a show outline for each night. So you're going to get that. Links to each one of our guests. You're going to get all of that. Future events, the podcast, memberships, news, everything is right there at jimmychurchradio.com. Okay, it's so simple. That should just be your central point. And if you're going to branch off of that, of course, everything is on Twitter. We're big on social media here. So, Facebook and Twitter for us is social media, Facebook and Twitter. We do have an Instagram account, but I just don't have the time. Should I just go Instagram, everybody? Okay, let me see in Twitter right now. Let me see the Twitter response. How many listeners right now have Instagram and want me to hang out on Instagram and post stuff and things? Just give me your response. I should post something up in Facebook. I will do that. if you guys, if you feel that Instagram, IG is one of the platforms that you use and you want me over there, I'll do it. Okay? All right. Where am I? Email throughout the show, Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. And before I get to the main stuff, I got to tell you what happened last night. So Rita and I, we go to dinner. We go to dinner with Scott and his wife, Kathy, and Kerr Smith, and his wife, Lisa, and Rita, myself, and went to a nice restaurant, and it was all good. After that, and this is pretty depressing for me. I didn't even think about this. We didn't take any pictures. All right? And I want, and it was weird. After we were done, we were so busy talking and hanging out and eating and doing all of that. We were there for a few hours and done, and we're talking in the parking lot, and it was all great. We didn't want to say goodnight. We're having a great time. And then we're in the car. I'm like, we forgot to take pictures. So what do? Go back to the restaurant, get everybody to... We didn't take pictures. So anyway, we did that last night. So anyway, after that, Rita and I went to a pot store. That's right. The Mary Jane. We went to a pot store. Now, for the first time. It's legal, right? Whatever. It's just, it's so we get on our cell phones, we find a pot store, and we go. Right? There's an app for that, right? So, and we go, we find one that's got, 5 stars, and we go. Do you go to a 1-star rated pot store? So we go, and it's my first time. And I go in, and wow. Right? Now, I've lived on this planet for 54 years, and for 40 of those years, been waiting for a moment like this that you would not think that would ever arrive. But it's here. So many states now, it's completely legal. But, and so I didn't know what to expect. I've seen pictures, right? But I don't know what to expect. And so we go in, clear security, we get through all of that, and then we go in. And it was funny because the security guard, took one look at me and he goes, "First time?" I was like, yeah. And he's yelling at me, "First timer coming in, first timer coming in." And it was really funny. So anyway, go through and walk in, and look, I know so many of you, you've been to your pot stores, and you're probably laughing at me right now for being the old dude in the room and stuff. Rita's already, she's done this before. I'm the new guy. So we walk in, and there it is, man, wall to wall bud, just all the way around, and jars, I don't know, 4 deep on all of these countertops with all the labels on them with these crazy names, and so and it was really, really cool. And so, but what was where are the pics of you and Rita buying pot? Yeah, no cell phones allowed inside one of those stores. I can assure you of that. And there's no video or cell phone pics. But so I'm like, can I smell that? Sure. Really? Just picking up. And I mean, there must have been 100 or 150 types of pot, right? And all the way around. And I'm just opening up these jars and smelling and looking and putting them down, and it was really fun. It was so cool to do. So it was so freeing, So anyway, we go through all of that. And then I look up on the thing, and it says, for first timers, you get a goodie bag. And so, we go through, and I'm like, okay, we'll take, it was so funny. We'll take some of that. Eighth, I don't know, quarter, I don't know. Let's just whatever. So we buy one of the OG Face Off was what. Have you guys heard of this pot called OG Face Off. Right? I bought that because of the name. But anyway, so we go through all of that. And I said to our bud tender, I said, so do I get a goodie bag? She goes, of course, you get a goodie bag. I was like, all right, cool. And now, this is the bizarre thing about this. Yeah, Brian just said, I've never been to a pot store either. Brian, you got to go. It's pretty liberating. But so we go out to the car now. Oh, and they put everything. You guys are laughing at me now. I get it, but so they put everything that we bought. It's in a prescription bag, like from a pharmacy, RX. We go out and we get in the car, start it up, and I turned to Rita, and that's because I was all cool, inside. I'm all cool in the store. Walk out, get in the car, and I'm like, damn, that was insane. That was insane. And I put the car, we're driving, we're pulling out of the parking lot, and I'm like, this is legal. Don't care about the cops. You don't care. And it just seems like yesterday, think about this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that this was not only illegal, but people were going to prison for this and still are in prison for pot, right? And we're driving, and not a care in the world. We just walked into a pot store, bought weed, got a goodie bag. I don't even know what's in the goodie bag. A goodie bag that would have gotten you arrested and still can get you arrested in many states in the United States. So we go and we get home, and I want to know what's in the goodie bag. So we open up the goodie bag, and in there are a couple of blunts, right? Free blunts, a couple of little film canisters of weed, free samples, and some other stuff, and some papers, and some lighters and stuff. Pretty cool goodie bag, right? And what kind of goods do you get in a goodie bag from a pot store? And in the goodie bag, there was a blunt cutter that was in there. It was pretty cool, blunt splicer. A couple rolls, packages of rolling paper, a couple of film canisters of different samples of pot. 2 blunts were in there, and a couple of lighters. Pretty cool little goodie bag. But it was this liberating thing, And so this morning, I'm sitting there thinking about what went down last night, and that there are people in prison right now for pot. Yeah, when did Jimmy start smoking blunts? No, they gave us the blunts. I didn't say we smoked the blunts. I'm saying they gave us blunts, of which I have too. I didn't bring them to the bunker, otherwise I'd show them to you. Tomorrow night on the show, I don't care now. You can drive around in the car with them. I'll show you what the blunts, what they gave us. But there are people in prison for pot. For a joint, an ounce, a couple of pounds, growing it, whatever. And then in some states it's completely legal, and here we are driving around and without a care in the world, and which is great. It's cool. I'm glad that we're here today with this. Remember in the AMA last week, somebody asked me the last time I smoked pot. It's been a long time. It still has. I didn't smoke any weed last night. But it's been a while. The point to all of this is that I'm very aware, and the blunts are just all shake. Try the gummy bears. Thank you for that, David. And I am. We actually having this conversation on the air. I looked for gummy bears last night in the pot store. I must have missed it. They had brownies, and they had all kind. They had like popcorn, right? They had all of that stuff. I didn't see the gummy bears. I really wanted to get some gummy bears, but anyway, that there are people in prison today. It's just that there are people in the United States right now that can't do what we did. Right? Okay? That it just doesn't feel right to me, because the way that we felt last night is the way that it should be all the way across this country. There you go. All right. I went to my first pot store last night. I can't wait to go back. So does that mean if we're a first timer at that pot store, are we in the pot store system now? Right? Where do we go to another pot store? Are we first timers there and we get a goodie bag? So do you hit all the pot stores in Los Angeles? I do want to go and see what a pot store is like in Beverly Hills. I want to experience that and see what the upscale environment is like. But yeah, it was pretty trippy. That was pretty fun. That was pretty liberating. Pretty cool. All right, there we go. It's my breaking news. We went to our first weed shop. The ECETI Roadshow is heading up the West Coast, and if you would like to go to the ECETI Roadshow and hang out with everybody, click on the banner over at jimmychurchradio.com. You'll get the full schedule and the details. Our next event is June 1st through the 4th, 2018, Contact in the Desert, Indian Wells, Palm Springs at the Renaissance Resort and Spa. Click on the banners over at jimmychurchradio.com. Don't forget to sign up for our Soul Tech Gathering up at ECETI Ranch. Now, that's August 9th through the 12th. I have something in my throat. That's what River Moon Coffee's for. SoulTechGathering.com. And I got a bunch of email over the weekend, and people were asking me this. Look, and I get it. I got email from people from outside of the United States, and so you know who you are. I don't want to, I'm not going to mention your names on the air. From both England and from Australia, that are coming to the Soul Tech Gathering, and I can't wait. And also a couple of emails from people outside of California that are asking about my recommendations and what I would do up there. Look, this is my take. This is my take. I would stay at ECETI if you can. Okay, that's what we're doing this year. If you're going to stay off campus, then you've got to check it out. Trout Lake is very small. It's very, very small. I don't know if there's any Airbnbs there. There may be stuff for rent there. I don't know. But it's small. We're talking about small. So if there's a way for you to arrange to stay at ECETI, camping or get an ERT or whatever, I don't know. I don't know what the status is on that kind of stuff. But you want to stay at ECETI. You really, really, really do. So if you're going to drive in, then bring your camping gear. Bring your sleeping bags. Bring your air mattresses. Bring your tent. Stay at ECETI. It's the best way to do it. You're going to want to do just that, because we're going to be up late sky watching. We're going to be up early eating breakfast. Okay, so I'm just telling you how it is. So I would stay at ECETI if you can. If you got to stay off-site, go ahead and do that. There are things that are there at SoulTechGathering.com, and there's information for you to do just that. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. I just mentioned that earlier. Over 800 archive shows, just $2 a month. Help support the show. It's really cool. $2 a month. And if you want to become an official Fadernaut, do that in our membership section over at jimmychurchradio.com. All right, let's get the show cracking. Happy birthday to today. Guitarist John Frusciante is 48. I can't believe he's that young. I've been listening to him forever. Red Hot Chili Peppers. And wow, 48 years old. I thought he was more closer to my age. Our dead guy's birthday today is Andy Gibb. Rita showed up in the bunker today and caught me listening to Andy Gibb songs all day. Andy Gibb, 1958 to 1988, died at the age of 30. Unbelievable. Fourth of the brothers Gibb, Barry, Robin, and Maurice, the Bee Gees, had 3 number 1 songs, such as I Just Want to Be Your Everything, played that today 10 times, Love is Thicker Than Water, and Shadow Dancing, and OD'd. Yeah, at the age of 30. Andy Gibb, happy birthday. On this day in history, OTD 1963, the hula hoop is patented by Whammo co-founder Arthur Spud Mellon. An estimated 25 million hula hoops were sold in 1958 when it launched during its first 4 months of production. You heard me. 25 million were sold. That's just crazy. That's crazy. Okay, here's a fader fact for you. Even though Fruit Loops, this is a fact, even though, and I'm a cereal guy, you know this, I eat my cereal. Even though Fruit Loops are different colors, they all are of the same flavor. And that is a fact. I bet you don't believe me, right? You eat the pink one, you eat the blue one, you eat the yellow one, you eat the green ones. You thought, I think it's the power of suggestion with the color. That's right, because they're all the same flavor. And that is a fader fact. All right, tonight's Riz Virk. He's going to be here in a few short minutes at the bottom of the hour. Full show on Bitcoin, crypto, and the blockchain. All right, tomorrow night is Matthew Ryan. Wednesday night, Marina Jacoby. Thursday night is Fader night. Now, over the weekend, big news broke over the weekend. You probably missed it, but I'm going to help you out right now. Stephen Hawking. That's right. Stephen Hawking said over the weekend, he was at some like Star Trek convention or conference, I forget what it was. It might not have even been that, but it was something was going on. Neil deGrasse Tyson was the host, I think. But that's not what's important. What's most important is that Stephen Hawking said that he knows what happened before the Big Bang. Quoting Hawking, the boundary condition of the universe is that it has no boundary, end quote. All right, now before you start tripping, listen to me. Some are translating this to mean there was no time before time began, as time was always there. Whoa. Heavy, right? It's kind of what I've always talked about in this show. More on that in just a second. Hawking says that amid the most infinitely small quantum foam of the singularity before the Big Bang, time existed in a bent state. Yeah. So, there never was a Big Bang that created something from nothing. It just looks that way from our point of perspective. Down to nothing. The Big Bang. Now, he went on to say, and I'm quoting here, all the evidence seems to indicate that the universe has not existed forever, but that it had a beginning about 15 billion years ago. There must have been a beginning. Otherwise, the universe would be in a state of complete disorder by now, and everything would be at the same temperature. In an infinite and everlasting universe, every line of sight would end at the surface of a star. Interesting. He says, this would mean that the night sky would have been as bright as the surface of the sun. And the only way of avoiding this problem would be if, for some reason, the stars did not shine before a certain time. End quote. Now, you got to stop and think here. So, does that mean things were different at the Big Bang? The density, so he goes on, I'm quoting, the density would have been infinite. It would have been what is called a singularity. At a singularity, all of the laws of physics would have broken down. This means that the state of the universe after the Big Bang would not depend on anything that may have happened before. Now, that's pretty interesting, right? But this is an issue for those that follow physics. All of physics. Because he goes on to say, since events before the Big Bang have no observational consequences, one may as well cut them out of the theory and say that time began at the Big Bang. Events before the Big Bang are simply not defined because there's no way one could measure what happened at them, end quote. But there are ways to figure out what came before, according to Hawking. And he says this. I think he listens to Fade to Black. Quantum theory introduces a new idea, that of imaginary time. Imaginary time may sound like science fiction, and it has been thought and suggested in Doctor Who. Interesting. But nevertheless, it is a genuine scientific concept. One can picture it in the following way. One can think of an ordinary real time as a horizontal line. On the left, there is the past. On the right, there is the future. But there's another kind of time in the vertical direction. This is called imaginary time, because it's not the kind of time that we normally experience, but in a sense, it is just as real as what we call time. Now think about what this has to do with the Big Bang, because Hawking goes on to say, James Hartle of the University of California, Santa Barbara, and I have proposed that space and imaginary time together are indeed finite, right? Without boundary. They would be like the surface of the earth, but with two more dimensions. The surface of the earth is finite in extent, but it doesn't have any boundaries or edges. And he says, I have been around the world and I didn't fall off. The only certainty about this infinitesimally small quantum building blocks of our universe is that they are uncertain. Simply observing them can cause them to change. They can be in two places or two states at once. Quantum computing. Qubits, right? Of course. He listens to Fade to Black. Now, I agree with Hawking. The universe we are in, well, half of Hawking. The universe we are in didn't start with the Big Bang. I've always said that. His theory on time is a little different, and I disagree with him here. I'm not sure I'm with him. While it dictates our lives, time, we still don't know what it is, time, or exactly where it comes from, time. We kind of understand how it works. We have watches and clocks. We know the effects of time when you run out of time or you don't have enough time. It's kind of like gravity, if you think about it. We know it's there. We know it's real, but we don't know anything about it, right? It's really strange. And just like quantum mechanics, quantum theory, quantum physics, parallel worlds, and the multiverse, only time will tell. Seriously. You gotta love it, right? That's why you hang out here on Fade to Black, so you can catch something like that. All right, Riz Virk is here tonight. Very excited. I've been wanting to do this show for a very long time. It is blockchain, crypto, and Bitcoin, all in one evening. All of the questions answered. There you go. From the very best. Riz Virk. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. And I'll be right back for our crypto kind of evening with Riz Virk. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black Blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Natural Health Solutions with Chris and Ronnie.
Hey, Ronnie, how you doing?
Great, Chris.
Now, you're the CEO of GetTheTea.com, right?
Yes, I am.
What is GetTheTea.com? I mean, is this tea you buy in a store?
Well, no, it's not. Life Change Tea is just that. Life-changing. Life Change Tea is an herbal tea that gently cleanses your body from intruders.
What do you mean by intruders?
Well, intruders are toxins, chemicals, GMOs, heavy metals, and more. They're in our food, in our water, in our air we breathe.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously.
And Life Change Tea will help you with removing these, as you say, intruders?
That's right, Chris.
Are there side effects with this tea?
Well, you might lose a little weight. When you clean your colon, you lose weight, you feel better, and you have more energy.
Wow. Ronnie, where can people purchase Life Change Tea?
Oh, that's easy. GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com.
Ronnie, I want to thank you for being on the show. People, don't forget, GetTheTea.com.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Win big with KGRA this summer. Tickets and hotel accommodations to the biggest conferences, autographed books and DVDs, chances to win all-inclusive conference cruises, and private dinners with your favorite KGRA hosts. Click the contest tab at kgraradio.com for your chance to win big this summer. Your contact for the best alternative talk radio on the planet. kgraradio.com.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Riz Virk is here. Tomorrow night, Matthew Ryan. Wednesday night, Marina Jacoby. Thursday night, Fader night. It don't get any better, does it? You guys are spoiled, every single one of you. Been waiting for the Bitcoin crypto blockchain show. I know you have. So tonight's the night. Riz Virk is an advisor, investor, and the head of corporate development at Sliver.tv. Member of the founding team at Theta Labs, Inc. He also serves as the current director of Play Labs at MIT, did his research at MIT Media Lab. Rizwan is an early investor in cryptocurrency and many blockchain companies, including Ripio, BitPagos, CoinMkt, Bex.io, and has been active with BitAngels since 2013. He's the co-author of several cryptocurrency-related papers and columns, including online automatic auctions for Bitcoin over-the-counter trading in 2015, creating a peer-to-peer system for buying and selling Bitcoin online 2013, and how I cornered the Bitcoin mining market with a quantum computer. He says theoretically. I think there's more to that than he's actually revealing to us. Rizwan received his BS in computer science and engineering from MIT and his master's in management from Stanford Graduate School of Business. He is much smarter than me. Tonight, we're going to discuss Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and the blockchain technology behind it and what it means to the future of our world. I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only Riz Virk. Riz, good evening, my friend. How are you?
Good evening, Jimmy. Doing well. Thanks for having me on again.
Quit being so nervous, because the first question out of the gate tonight, have you been to a pot store?
I heard you talking about that earlier. I have not been to a pot store.
You got to go, Riz.
Now that it's legal here in California, I guess maybe next time I'm down in LA, I'll go with you.
No, where you live, you guys got those high-end pot stores. You need to, you got to go to the one that Zuckerberg goes to.
I don't know of any around here, but there probably are.
Riz, they have an app for that.
They probably do.
They do.
Although Apple may not approve it.
Yeah,
the app business for many years. It's very difficult to get Apple to approve anything a little controversial.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that is so funny. But it was, and I know you were listening earlier, but what a liberating feeling. I remember the first time I went into a casino. And my first night in a casino, I won a few $1,000s, right? Like $3,500 on one slot machine. My first series of pulls, and I'd never even been in a casino. So I'm walking out of the casino with $35 $100 bills in my pocket, right? And I'm thinking, this can't be legal. This can't be. How is this even legal? I robbed.
That's a pretty good return there.
Right.
How much did you bet? Like $100 or?
I got a roll of $20, right? 20 silver dollar, $1, and it was like my second pull. I couldn't believe it, and I thought, wow, this is liberating. But it was that kind of feeling, you leave and you get in the car and just a few years ago, this would have sent us to jail, right? And it was a pretty crazy feeling. So you got to go. Next time. And I don't even smoke pot. I just went to go and bought it to buy it, but it was fun.
Well, there you go. I'll definitely have to check it out. It's interesting with the legalization of pot in a few states. It kind of ties to our topic of discussion tonight with Bitcoin and banks. And what I've been hearing from people who've opened these pot-related businesses is that they can't get bank accounts in the traditional banking system because the banks are worried about, liability for different states where it isn't legal. And so they're like holding lots of cash, which is kind of a dangerous thing to do. But it reminded me of Bitcoin a few years ago. When I started to buy Bitcoin, if you walked into a bank and said, I have a company that's doing Bitcoin X trading or whatever you're doing with Bitcoin back then, they would not let you open a bank account. I mean, they would simply just reject you and say, you're not allowed to be in the banking system. That's how, against this idea of cryptocurrency, the traditional banking system was. And it's gotten a bit better, but than it was, back then. But it, was reminding me of the with pot-related businesses.
It sounds to me like you have been to a pot store. But that's okay, Riz. It's your story. You can stick to it. But listen, I didn't even think about that. I didn't even offer up a credit card last night. I paid cash. But yeah, I'm wondering. Yeah, you're right.
That's why you need armed guards in some of the pot stores in Colorado, or so I've heard.
Oh yeah, there was armament there last night. That was pretty cool.
But it's because they can't go and deposit it in the bank, so they have to keep the cash somewhere. So the system is changing in certain states, but not in others, and it's an interesting reflection of the financial system and how. How they view changes.
So how do they get, I know we're going to be talking about Bitcoin and blockchain tonight, but how do they get the cash out of the pot store to the bank?
That's a good question. I wouldn't know, but I'm assuming they have armored cars. But like I said, many of them can't get bank accounts. So they have to, figure out where to deposit that cash or where to put it. Or how to invest it somewhere. And it's an interesting emerging problem in that whole industry.
Yeah. I mean, how do you pay your taxes then?
Right. Exactly.
Oh, okay. All right. This is that. I'm going to do, what, everybody, I'll do the pot store special soon. We'll cover all of these important topics, but, okay. Wow. Just open up. I mean, for me, it was such a wonderful thing to go through. And, it's so liberating because, like you, we're of the same age where we went through all of the oppression that, pot smokers had to deal with over these, going back to the 1930s. And it was unfair and it was crazy, but that pressure in some states now is completely gone. Completely. You can walk from a pot store, get in your car with a bag full of weed and not care, right? Right. A cop is driving by, you can show it to him, right? It's like, dude, stop. So anyway, all right. Now, I want to break down the show tonight in 3 different segments. I want to do this first one on Bitcoin, what it is, because it was the first. And now, again, I want to clear up some things, too. As you know, Riz and the audience, I've been studying and talking about Bitcoin since the first episodes of Fade to Black. I've been talking about it before anybody even knew what Bitcoin was. But I want to clear up some of the things that are out there on Bitcoin and the technology first, and then we're going to go to full-on crypto in the second segment, about what crypto is and tokens and the markets and the exchanges. We'll clear up all of that myth because there's a lot of urban legend that is out there. So we'll do that. And then the third and fourth segments, we'll take some calls, but the third and fourth segments will be about blockchain, its technology, and its foundation for the future of everything. Okay, so that's what we'll do. We got to start with the beginning. And you've been around Bitcoin since, the earliest days of it. What is Bitcoin? Is it a currency or is it an investment?
Well, it's a good question. And I've been playing with Bitcoin for a number of years, not since the very beginning. Bitcoin really came about because of a paper in 2008 by Satoshi Nakamoto, who is an unknown person. We'll talk about that mystery later. But it really was bringing together concepts that had existed in computer science for quite a while. And these concepts were peer-to-peer computing and cryptography. And then it introduced this new idea of a blockchain. But, Bitcoin was not the first digital currency. If you go back before that, the first digital currencies really were in video games. So you look at Ultima Online, for example, and then later World of Warcraft Gold, and then later Second Life. These were digital currencies that had value, and people were trying to store them. They were trying to trade them. In fact, the biggest Bitcoin exchange in the early years of Bitcoin, it's no longer around now, but it was called Mt. Gox, and it was in Japan. And not many people know this, but Mt. Gox stands for Magic the Gathering Online Exchange. So there was this kind of origin, within the gaming industry, with this digital or virtual currency, and it's played a role in a lot of different aspects of what Bitcoin has become, which nowadays is referred to as cryptocurrency. And everyone from Steve Bannon to other people in the Bitcoin world were involved with the gaming virtual currency, back in the day. So we go to 2008. After the financial crisis, where the U.S. government issued trillions of new dollars to try to support the financial system, and I think many of us remember that it was on the verge of collapse. And so the theory behind Bitcoin is, instead of having a central government that can issue any number of pieces of paper that it wants to issue, right? Since fiat currency, which is the term used at least in the crypto world for regular currency like US dollars or British pounds. So unlike fiat currency, which can be issued by an agency like the Federal Reserve or by governments in other countries, Bitcoin was a currency that would have a fixed number of Bitcoins ever created. And you could trade those Bitcoins, and it was based on the idea of cryptography. And the idea was that I would have a private key controlling my wallet, which would have my Bitcoin in there. And I could send those Bitcoin to somebody else's wallet using my private key. So that's where the cryptography comes in. And we'll talk a little bit more about, how that works down the road. But, the major innovation that from a technical perspective with Bitcoin was the blockchain. And the idea of the blockchain was that it was a open ledger that everybody could see. And that's what really makes, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency unique, is this underlying technology of blockchain.
Now, let me jump in right there. When we go back to Mt. Gox and the original cryptos that were out there for gaming, did they have a blockchain, or did the blockchain paper start with Satoshi and Bitcoin?
So the previous virtual currencies did not have blockchains. Right. They tended to be owned by a central company. So, for example, World of Warcraft was created by Blizzard. Their server kept track of how many pieces of gold every user had. Same thing with Second Life, Linden Labs. So it was a centralized system, and that's why we kind of call it a virtual currency. Now, the difference with Bitcoin is that there was no central server that could tell you exactly who had what. There was this thing called a blockchain, which you can think of as a very big file, right? If you think about it, it has every single Bitcoin ever recorded and every transaction that was ever sent. Now, people say, Bitcoin is anonymous, and to a certain extent, that's true. It is anonymous, but it's not secret in the sense that with cash, you could give some cash to the pot dealer, right? And no one would know that cash went from you to there. With Bitcoin, you know that it went from this address to that address. Now, you don't know who owns those addresses, so there is a level of anonymity there. But you do know that the Bitcoin went from one person's wallet to another.
Now, and so with Satoshi Nakamoto, the concept of the blockchain started there?
Pretty much. I mean, there had been previous attempts at this. I mean, that's really what popularized the idea. I mean, there was a thing called digital gold in the 90s, which was also based a little bit on cryptography. And then there's this idea of replication, which has been around forever. So the idea with the blockchain and with you have multiple computers, each of which have a copy of the blockchain. Therefore, they all have to agree when something happens. That something being, Bitcoin goes from address A to address B. And so when they agree to that, they assemble all those transactions in something called a block, which is just a collection of a bunch of transactions. And that gets added to the blockchain, and everyone has a copy. Now, that idea goes back to the 60s. So if you look at the internet and how the internet works, there's these things called DNS, which many of you have heard of, which are domain name servers, which basically is a replicated database, right? It says that if I type www.jimmychurchradio.com, right, what is the IP address that I need to go to resolve that domain name to a specific IP address so that we can get to the server for Fade to Black. So that was built with the Department of Defense in such a way that if there was a war and certain servers went down, these DNS servers would be replicated everywhere so the internet wouldn't go down, right? So the idea has been out there, but with Bitcoin, it was brought together in kind of this unique way of storing transactions, and it brought in this idea of cryptography using what's called a hash function, right? And the hash function takes one string and turns it into another, and it's very difficult to figure out what the original string was. It's computationally intensive. But so that's the real innovation with Bitcoin was the combination of a peer-to-peer system, cryptographic hash functions for public and private keys, and this idea of a blockchain. Now, if you're going to have all these servers out there, and they all have to do this work of keeping track of everybody's transactions, well, it's a lot of work. So he had to come up with some incentive for people to do this, and the incentive was mining initially. Eventually, it's going to be transaction fees, but it has been Bitcoin mining. And so what is Bitcoin mining, right? So you think of mining, you think of gold going into the South Africa someplace, into the mountains, and you find some gold and you pull it out. Well, mining in the crypto world is more about trying to solve some cryptographic puzzle where we don't know the answer. And so like I might say to you, here's a string called XYZ, and for me to figure out what that hashes to, I have to basically go through that process, and it might hash to a number like 1200. And the way Bitcoin mining works is you have to keep trying random numbers, until you can solve the puzzle. And so you don't know who's going to solve the puzzle, but you have to do a lot of work. That's why many of you may have heard the term proof of work. Mm-hmm. So it's based on this idea that the more work you do, the more likely you will get the block reward which is what mining is. So that's how new Bitcoin gets created. It gets created by miners around the world. So that's kind of a background of how it works.
Now, the original, thank you for that. And it clears up a lot about the history. But the second part of my question was, is it a currency or is it an investment? Did it set out as a currency and has it turned into an investment? Is it a combination of both? What is it?
Well, that's a good question, because in some ways it is a combination of both, but it's also something new, right, that we haven't quite had before. If you look at the role of money traditionally, what is money? Right? And it used to be on the gold standard, and it used to be a chit that you could go to the government or to the bank and say, okay, this is how much gold I have, give it to me, right? So that was a store of value, right, is what it was originally meant to be. And then money was also a way to exchange goods and services. So, right, instead of me bartering with you to sell you a book for some pot, right, I would give you a certain amount of dollars, and that would that would be the transaction. Right. So I think when it started out, the idea was that cryptocurrency could be both a means of exchange as well as a store of value. Now, what's happened over time is that Bitcoin has become more of an investment and store of value and a way to transfer money electronically from any point in the world to anywhere else. The second use of it, which was for this doing transactions, started off as a pretty good use case. But it's become less and less practical because the transaction fees have become pretty high over time. And so it costs a lot, and you have to wait 10 minutes or so till the next block is mined before the transaction is confirmed. So that's why you don't necessarily see a lot of websites that say pay with Bitcoin. But if you're in China, so for example, the Chinese government has restrictions that says you can only move, $50,000 at a time out of China. And suppose some Chinese investor wants to buy a house in California, which we both know cost a lot more than $50,000 these days. You can try to go to the traditional banking system, and then you've got all this paperwork, and you're trying to do it, $50K at a time, and the government can say, nope, you can't do that. We're not allowing you to take your money out. But with Bitcoin, you can just transfer $50,000 worth of Bitcoin or $1 million of Bitcoin or whatever amount of Bitcoin from one wallet to another, and it doesn't matter that the owner of the second wallet is in the US or in Europe, and the owner of the first wallet was in China. So it's become both an investment as well as a way to transfer money around the world, getting around the fees of the banking system and all of the complications that might come up within the banking system.
Now, can different governments monitor that flow of money transfers? In other words, if North Korea move Bitcoin around and nobody knows where it's going to or comes from?
Well, so anybody can move Bitcoin around from anywhere to anywhere else. There is, however, a transaction that's generated that says it went from wallet address A to wallet address B. Now, there's no way to know who owns wallet A and who owns wallet B. So that's where the anonymity comes in.
Right.
Now, there are, people who say that the NSA is tracking this, so they kind of know who owns what wallets. That's why if you use a service like Coinbase, which is one of the more popular websites in the U.S., where you can buy Bitcoin, they work with the IRS. And so the governments are trying to work with the exchanges to try to have some control over Bitcoin. The Chinese government at one point banned exchanges, and it caused the price of Bitcoin to drop, and then later they kind of softened it. There's been a lot of demand in Asia, in particular. Now, sometimes, the practical uses of Bitcoin can be even more useful outside a developed country. Like in South America, where they've had, lots of currency fluctuations, right? And, one of the companies that I'm an investor in, you mentioned, it's called Ripio. They originally started to let American tourists pay for like a hotel using Bitcoin, and because the hotel owners in that part of South America would rather have Bitcoin, it was more stable than their own currencies, right?
Right.
So where you don't have a stable currency, something like a cryptocurrency can be quite useful as a means of exchange as well, even though it's volatile. it's not necessarily as volatile as some currencies in some places.
Is there, okay, we're going to head towards a break here in a second. We'll pick up where we're leaving off now. But Bitcoin is the preferred currency of drug dealers, murderers, and sex traffickers, right? That's
well,
so. I mean, you
yes
have that.
No.
Well,
I'd say cash is the preferred currency because it's completely untraceable.
Well, but how? Okay, but if you're on the dark, okay, look, we all know about Silk Road and what went down there.
Yep.
And so when you have that kind of reputation tied to something like that and the other stuff that goes on in the dark web, there may be some cash that exchanges hands there, of course. I doubt that there's credit card. I don't know. I don't surf the dark web for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, probably not credit cards because credit cards can be refunded, right? You can tell your credit card company and say, "Give me back the money."
And you can't do that with Bitcoin, certainly. And so
you can't do that with Bitcoin or cash, right?
Now, and then the trend started. I mean, the trend, which continues to this day, is stealing Bitcoin, right? That was the thing in the dark web forever, was start a website. Everything that goes in the holding bin, right, that is in escrow, and suddenly everybody's Bitcoins have disappeared and the website is closed down. Well, you know what? You give a criminal a reason to do something, they're going to figure out a way to steal your stuff. And so now we have Bitcoin, the preferred cash of criminal activity. How do you get rid of that stigma, or is it always going to be there?
Well, I think, on the second point, there is always this danger of somebody stealing your Bitcoin because it's an electronic thing. So if somebody can find a way to get your private key, right, that's why a lot of people are storing their private keys off of the computer in USB or physical printouts so that there's no way for somebody to steal them if they're not on your computer. But that's generally a problem, with electronic tracking of money or cash. I go to Bank of America and they always say to me, hey, we have people who've basically were, robbed of their X dollars out of their bank account. So that's happening even in the traditional system as well. To your second point, yes, Bitcoin, I think, has been used for all kinds of purposes, including many nefarious purposes. And, a few years ago, it might have even been used to buy pot, for example, right? But you can look at, kind of the VHS tape, right, as a technology that came out. And it was mostly used for porn initially, but eventually it became used for regular movies. And then eventually more and more people, had VCRs. And so as this idea of cryptocurrency grows, there may be different cryptos that are used for different things, but the percentage that's used for these kind of purposes, goes down compared to what other people are using it for. I mean, I would say today, Silk Road, that whole thing happened a few years ago, right, when they shut that down. Today, the amount of Bitcoin that's traded and the valuation is probably 10 times what it was back then, which means most likely whatever percentage of the total amount of Bitcoin being traded was being used for nefarious purposes has probably gone way down, even if it's the same dollar amount, right? And so I think as any technology makes its way into the mainstream, usually, people will find nefarious purposes initially for it, but eventually, as more and more people use it, that becomes a smaller and smaller percentage of the people that use it. And I think cryptocurrency, is no different.
Okay, so, well, we'll pick this up right where we're leaving off right now. Our guest tonight, Riz Virk. We're doing it all tonight: Bitcoin, crypto, blockchain, the future. All questions answered. This is Fade to Black. Our guest, Riz Virk, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Hello, Fadernauts. This is Jimmy Church, and I'm introducing New Pharma, a company whose products are based on science. Human function based on the endocannabinoid system, or ECS. New Pharma firmly believes in this science, and their research indicates that support of the ECS provides the beneficial effects for a healthy lifestyle. New Pharma's science includes relief capsules for pain relief, sleep capsules, which are natural support for occasional sleeplessness. Foundation is support for your ECS, and Fit capsules support your active lifestyle. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B for a 33% discount on all of their products. Or visit newpharma.com for all of the knowledge on the science. That's GNUpharma.com. Go back, Lee Tappy.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA Digital Broadcast Station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
Ancient Life Oil. Life-changing. The real oil. CBD is truly ancient life oil from the source. This oil has no psychoactive effect and is also legal in all 50 states. When you're healthy, you're happy. The truth about this wonderful plant is that it wants to give back to mankind life, longevity, and happiness. Ancient Life Oil are golden grade, all organic, non-GMO, and infused with high-quality liquid coconut oil. It's simple. Just go to ancientlifeoil.com today. That's ancientlifeoil.com. The best, purest, organic, and non-GMO CBD in the world. Go back, Lee Tappy. The statements made regarding these products have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Please consult your healthcare professional about potential interactions or other possible complications before using any product.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. Our host, I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Almost said our host is Riz Virk. He would probably do much better than me. Actually, we should turn this around. Riz will ask the questions about Bitcoin from me. That's a scary thought, isn't it? Our guest tonight, Riz Virk. That would be hilarious, right, Riz?
We can do that if you like.
Oh, no, we can. You don't want to hear my answers. But let me ask you this. When we're going to shift the gears over to crypto, which includes Bitcoin, right? A square can be a rectangle kind of thing. So we'll jump into this. But a couple of weeks ago, the news broke about one of the exchanges in South Korea got hit for $500 million worth of Bitcoin. And that the alleged theft, the perps, was North Korea. Now, and I right now, I keep CoinDesk open. I'm always looking at the markets 24 hours a day. In the last 45 minutes, Bitcoin has tanked, by the way, so they're probably listening to this show. And so it's dropped. Let me look here. It's dropped about $300 in 45 minutes, right?
Yeah, but for Bitcoin, that's not considered a very big drop.
But you should see the drop, though. The major drop happened in 1 minute, right? Just boom. So anyway, when this $500 million theft happened, I immediately went over to the markets, and I'm watching this, and I know what's going on. Whoever stole these Bitcoins is now flooding the markets and selling it, turning it into cash. Now, so as an investor, and if I'm running an exchange and I'm talking people to, come in and invest in Bitcoin, what am I saying to them? Come on, the preferred currency of money laundering in North Korea. You help support, what is going, because that's essentially what is going on, at least in the public's eye, right? So help me out here. Is there monitoring of this when you're watching these market fluctuations? The governments aren't involved, and you can see these cyclical things in the graphs that are going on. It drops, it goes up, and it seems like there's profiting going on, and then it drops again, and it's like these 3-hour cycles. And it's an incredible thing, and no other stock market does this. So what is happening when you have a theft of 500 million Bitcoins, $500 million worth of Bitcoin?
Well, so that was a pretty big one, right? And there have been, thefts of Bitcoin from different exchanges over the years, even going back to Mt. Gox.
Yeah,
right?
Mt. Gox got hit. Yeah. Oh, that was
Mt. Gox.
Yes.
But we're talking about a total Bitcoin market cap of something like $200 billion, right? So we're talking less than 1% of the Bitcoin that's out there. That's not to say if you had your Bitcoin in that exchange, obviously you'd be very unhappy, right, that it got stolen.
There's no insurance.
There's no insurance right now, unlike fiat currency where, at least in the U.S., you've got your FDIC insurance, right, up to a certain amount of money. That said, it's an immature new technology and an immature new currency. And you know what? In the first 10 years of the U.S. dollar, there was no insurance, right? I mean, it didn't happen until the Great Depression with FDR, putting in, after so many people lost their money as banks failed. And so you're going to have this kind of immaturity in any new system over time. And then as these things happen, people will learn to find ways to make them more secure. I mean, if you look at a credit card company today or a bank and you look at, where they're spending their money, most of it is in IT, and they're spending it on fraud detection, right? So a bank today is primarily a fraud detection computer company, right? And they're trying to find ways to stop people from doing it. Same thing with the credit card company, right? And so those are relatively mature versions of the financial industry, whereas Bitcoin is, 10 years old this year, and not just Bitcoin, but crypto. Most cryptos are even younger than that. So I think there will be controls and more security added over time. Even now, a lot of the big exchanges do keep try to keep some of their Bitcoin keys, as I talked about, in cold storage, which is off the computer, not on a server that can be hacked. Now, anything can be hacked, as we talked about earlier, but I think it's just a show of immaturity within this market. Now, I will say we're going to talk about a couple of different, cryptos perhaps, and we're going to talk about Bitcoin, and I'm going to happily offer my opinion on where I think it's going because I've been involved for a while. But, I don't want anyone in the audience to take this as investment advice. Everybody should do their own research, and they should, decide and make their own investment decisions with their own investment advisors about cryptocurrency. There was one guy last year, I think, who's in the news who took a mortgage on his house and put everything into Bitcoin. That's not a strategy that I would recommend, even though he did well, but it was during a huge rise of price, during the course of that year.
Now, help me out here. By the way, everybody's questions that are lining up, I've got them all here. They're being fed to me. We will get to all of these, and they are excellent, excellent questions. So if you don't hear me get to these now, I'm aware and I see everything. Okay, so we will get to everybody's questions. And we're going to open up the phone lines too. But help me out here understanding a couple of things. Let's go back to the market peak, right? I'm going to use the 20,000 number. Let's just go with 20K. It's easy. It's whatever, 19,685 or whatever. But let's go with 20,000. So at its peak, if I went in and bought a car for 5 Bitcoins for $100,000, right? 5 Bitcoins. And I was able to go into a dealership and talk the general manager into taking 5 Bitcoins. And I'm telling him, hey, man, it's $20,000 today. Okay. And he does the transaction. And then at the end of the month, he goes to cash in his Bitcoins to put it into cash for his bank account at the car dealership. And now he goes back 3 weeks later, and it's now trading at $12,000, right? Did he just, I want to be clear here, did he just lose $50,000 on that car transaction? Or at the moment of the transaction of him accepting the Bitcoins, are they still worth $20,000 each?
Well, at the moment of accepting the transaction, they would have still been worth $20,000 each. So if he sold a Bitcoin, if he liquidated them at that moment in time, then he would get that. But, the flip side is also true. Go back 3 months before that when Bitcoin was at $7,000. That's September, October. If you had convinced him to accept, let's say 10 of those for a $70,000 car, and he had waited 3 months and it went up to $20,000, suddenly he would have made $200,000. I mean, that's true of any security. Now, Bitcoin is more volatile than most traditional currencies like the US dollar. But, there have been times in history where fiat currency, which is also backed only by the confidence of the people that use it, right? I mean, that's what fiat currency is all about. There have been many instances in history where a currency has devalued quickly because people lost confidence in the currency. You look at Germany between the wars, and you look at South America in the 80s. So, currency is not a fixed thing. And this is a new thing. So it's going to take time, for the volatility to find its place. But there was a big crash at the end of 2017. It had gone up to about 20,000. And in January, the price of Bitcoin went down to 8,000 or even 7,000, maybe even a little bit less than that.
And when that one day it dipped to $5,400.
There, so that was the low. But now it's been relatively stable for the past month at around 11,000. Now, this has happened before. I don't know if you watch Battlestar Galactica, right? But I would say all of this has happened before, and all of this will happen again. So in 2013, when I started to buy Bitcoin, it was at like $100 per Bitcoin at the beginning of the year. And by the end of the year, there was a bit of a frenzy and a mania, and people were jumping on the bandwagon, at least here in Silicon Valley. It wasn't quite at the level of mania that was last year, but it went up 10 times. And it got to like 1,300. Actually went up 13 times by the end of the year. By the end of 2013. And then you had the government, in particular China, you had Mt. Gox crash, you had China cracking down on exchanges saying you're not allowed to exchange fiat for Bitcoin because we don't want people to take their money out of China. And it crashed all the way down to like 300. And then it stabilized around 500 or 600. And it stayed that way for a couple of years. And so, if you go even further back, and that was more than a 50% drop, right? From 1,300 down to like 300, right? It was like a 70% drop. And then it stabilized for a few years. And then as more people started to come into the market, it started to go up again. If you go back even further than that, when it was at $100, people thought it was too high at one point and it crashed to like 50 or 20. I don't remember the exact numbers because it was before I was actively in that market. But going back to when it was at $10, people were shocked that it could go that high because it's just a new piece of code, right? Nobody really understood it. How could it be worth $10? And then it crashed to like $5. So this 50% crash seems to happen every time there's a bit of a mania about it. And I wrote a little article a couple months ago about is Bitcoin in a bubble, right? And my perspective is that long-term cryptocurrency is going to be an interesting technology and an interesting way to send financial resources back and forth. But you're going to have lots of ups and downs along the way, like we had recently.
Well, it's one thing to move money around and take out the middleman, and that's fine. But if it's not if it's not stable, then it's not, because it is completely unstable. I mean, that's exactly what, it's unstable. You don't know in 24 hours what is going on every single day of the year. And now, if dollars were like that, where one day the dollar is worth $1, the next day it's worth 20 cents, and the next day it's worth $1.50, and the next day it's worth, well, you wouldn't have faith in the dollar either. But at least over the long term, as a retailer, right? Yeah. So if you're a car dealer, going back to my analogy earlier, if you're a car dealer, there's no way that you could have faith in that. By the time you're done with the transaction of purchasing the car, 3 hours, right? 4 hours, you could have won or lost money, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of volatility, I agree. But again, you have to take a historical perspective. With the U.S. dollar, I mean, Bitcoin is not a substitute for the U.S. dollar today, nor is any cryptocurrency. But go back to, the 1700s and the 1800s when every state was issuing its own version of the dollars. Mm-hmm. Right? Before we had a U.S. dollar that was at least initially backed by gold, right, there was a lot of instability. And that's kind of where we are with crypto right now. There's all kinds of tokens, and there's Bitcoin, there's Ethereum, which is sort of the number 2 player, within the cryptocurrency space. And then there's Bitcoin Cash, there's Litecoin, there's lots of new tokens that are being issued as well. So we're a bit in the Wild West still, right? And so I would just say it's kind of early to compare Bitcoin to US dollars, right? But, there is this philosophy with cryptocurrency that no government should be able to restrict your money and where you can send it, right? I guess you could call it more of a libertarian approach, right? For anybody. You should be able to transfer your money anywhere you want to transfer to for your assets around the world. And whether it's a totalitarian government, North Korea shouldn't be able to stop its citizens either, right? Or China or the U.S. government. No one should be able to stop the free flow of funds. And yes, there will be some actors that use things for nefarious purposes, but there'll be lots of other people who are using it for legitimate purposes. I mean, I have friends from Russia who could not get their money out of Russia, when the sanctions went on in Crimea and the ruble collapsed, right? I mean, you're talking about existing currencies. Well, the ruble is the currency in Russia, and it had a huge collapse. I don't know where it is today, but this was a couple of years ago, right? So, they were not able, because of the laws and what the government wanted, the government didn't want them to take their money out. So they had to keep it in rubles, and basically they lost all their money. So, I mean, it's a different philosophy, and that's looking at it as currency or an investment, and not talking so much about the technology behind it, which I think is really the long-term, interesting thing about Bitcoin is not all the stuff that I've just been talking about.
Well, and we're going to do that at the bottom of the hour. We're going to shift everything over to the technology, which is blockchain, which can be applied everywhere. So we're going to get to that. But staying on crypto, what happens, because we're talking about fiats, there are backups to fiats and insurances. Okay, if the power goes out, right? If everything goes to crap, at least we have dollars that are green. You have change in your pocket. You have that. You have money that can be exchanged. What happens?
Well, is that true? If the power goes out completely, will Bank of America be able to say you had this many dollars?
Well, okay, but if I have cash in my mattress.
Well, but the same thing with Bitcoin. If I have my private key on my USB drive, I'll still have that even if the power goes out, so that when the power comes back on, I can still use it.
But you're saying
it's not as good as cash.
Right, you're saying but, and that's the key thing here. For instance, I mean, where cash is king, it's obvious. If you, Riz, you're walking out of Burger King, and I know that you love Burger King, so you're walking out of Burger King, and there's a homeless guy there, and he says, "Buy me a meal," and you go, "Well, here, do you take Bitcoin?" That's not going to go down. You understand what I'm saying?
Though there's a famous story about a pizza place, that.
Oh, that's a great story, and it's a true story.
He sold it he was going to, he wanted to accept, I forget, it was like 10 Bitcoin or 100 Bitcoin. I forget the exact
for two
number.
pizzas.
For 2 pizzas.
Yeah.
And, that ended up being worth, what would 100 Bitcoins be worth today, right? At 10,000 a pop.
Well, back in November, yeah.
But 20,000, it would have been worth more. But even today, at 10,000 a pop, it was worth quite a bit. So there's lots of stories like that
But what happens if the servers go down and you don't have your wallet on a USB drive? Is there a possibility that your stuff goes poof?
Well, so the whole idea of a peer-to-peer decentralized system is that no one computer is in charge of keeping track of all of the cryptocurrency. So if the power goes down across Russia, most likely we'll still have some power in the U.S., right? If the power were to go out in California, most likely there will still be places in Japan or Korea that still have power. So it's kind of architected to be fail-safe from the power going out in any one location. That's kind of the idea of it, which is why I think the idea is in some ways even more powerful than the particular implementation. I mean, I don't know 100 years from now what cryptocurrency we'll be using. Could be, not Bitcoin, could be Ethereum, could be some new currency. Most likely it'll be some new cryptocurrency that hasn't been invented yet. But the whole idea of a cryptocurrency is to have this decentralized way of keeping track of everything so that there's no one single point of failure in the system.
Now, if I have my wallet on my home computer and my hard drive pukes, right, and it's done, and I have no way of retrieving the data, what happens?
Yep, you're done, right? And this happened. There was a really famous story about a guy back in 2010, I think. So this is in the really early days of Bitcoin, where he was mining Bitcoin, and it was pretty loud to have the computer running all night. And his girlfriend said, "Stop that! Get rid of that." So he ended up just trashing that, turning the computer off, and eventually threw away the hard drive. And in 2013, that Bitcoin would have been worth $7 million, and today it's probably worth 70 or something like that. But it's the same thing as if you have a lot of cash in your house and your house burns down. What are you going to do? So you don't put you don't keep all your Bitcoin in one place necessarily on the hard drive. That's why recently people tend to use these USB wallets, so that if the hard drive itself fails, they've got that, and then you print out your keys as well physically. So they have these phrases that you can print out that you can use to regenerate your wallet address. I mean, the Bitcoin is still in the wallet. So unlike cash where it's destroyed, right, the Bitcoin or the crypto stays in the wallet that it's in unless somebody has the private key to transfer it out.
Now, the other part is this. There's 21 million capped, right? 21 million Bitcoins. That's it. That's the software. It's the way that it's written. Is there a way to tally all the Bitcoin? Well, I see it here, right? Today, the supply is 16,902,588, right? 902,588.
Yeah, you're looking at like CoinMkt.
Yep, I do. Dude, I am on top. I watch this all. I'm fascinated with it.
You are on top of this.
Okay, how much of that supply, the 16,902,000, is just missing or lost on hard drives in the bottom of a garbage dump?
There is, a significant portion of Bitcoin, particularly from the early days, right, when it just wasn't worth a lot. So there was an episode of The Big Bang Theory. I don't know if you saw this a couple of months ago, where they were like, "Hey, back in 2010, remember when we were mining Bitcoin?" And they were trying to find a laptop that had it, and they couldn't. And so that happens. There is a bunch of it that's out there. I don't know the exact number. I think that's the circulating supply. So that may or may not be the total amount that's been created. Actually, it probably is if I look at this, because the 21 million. So the way the Bitcoin works is every 10 minutes a new block is generated, and there's a block reward, which now is at like 12 Bitcoins or so. And you can do the math and figure out between when will that 21 million Bitcoin be created fully. But yeah, it does happen, and so that's why you have to take different precautions here than you would in a centralized system, right? I mean, in a centralized world, you may have a credit card, Visa. You can call up your bank and say, "Hey, I lost my credit card." Right? What can we do? And you can reverse transactions, and it's just a different philosophy. With cash, you can't do that, and with cryptocurrency, you can't do that. The whole idea was to not, the problem with a centralized system is then government can start to say, "Okay, you can use money for this, but not for that," right? And there are certain things I think we all agree you shouldn't use money for, but people do. And then you can start to get politicalization of what is considered appropriate ways to spend your money and what isn't. And not so much here in the U.S., but it happens in different countries, right?
Now, when people talk about, laundering money through Bitcoin, I understand that, and fundamentally people get that, but you still have to turn it into cash. So if, I'm sitting on, somebody sends me, I don't know why they would, but somebody sends me 1,000 Bitcoins, and I turn that into cash, and now electronically, and that gets added to my checking account. Now it's traceable. Is the IRS immediately notified of that? Because it's not really money laundering if you still got to turn the Bitcoin into cash. You've got to be able to use it at some point.
Yeah, I mean, technically that's not money laundering. That's just transferring cash to Bitcoin back to cash. Money laundering would be, at least my understanding, I'm not an expert in money laundering by any means, but if you took that cash and you deposited it in the bank would have a flag somewhere that the IRS would know you deposited, say, $100,000.
Right.
They want to know, where did the $100,000 come from? The IRS would want to know, right? You could say, well, I was selling pot, right? For example, or whatever, right? Or it was income from my real estate transaction. I mean, you have to report that stuff at the end of the year. So if you didn't report it, then it would be like any other unreported income, and the IRS would come down on you.
Right. So just because it was a Bitcoin transfer that I turned into cash, and also, so how does that, again, we're going to head towards a break. I have to go through an exchange, right? Does Bank of America buy Bitcoin?
No. So you would have to go through an exchange where you would sell to some other buyer, and then that buyer would transfer their money to the exchange, and then the exchange would transfer to you. And so that's where, for example, today, the biggest centralized exchange or repository in the U.S. is probably Coinbase, and the IRS has an agreement with them now that they have to report to the IRS every time somebody sells their Bitcoin. So this is not so much about money laundering or black market. It's just about, if you bought Bitcoin at 1,000 and you sold it at 10,000, well, you have a $9,000 gain. So just like anything else, you're supposed to pay taxes on that, assuming you believe in the IRS and you believe that all of that was passed, and there's an actual tax law, et cetera. They would come down on you just like they would in everywhere else. So over time, what's happening is this stuff is normalizing more. Now, if you're outside the U.S., it's still pretty much the Wild West. You can people buy and sell Bitcoin, don't report it. But over time, I mean, we're in early days for cryptocurrency here. Right? There will be systems to deal with all this stuff.
So you're suggesting, yeah, I see. So I need an offshore bank account.
I didn't say that.
No, I'm just playing. Anybody listening right now, these are just jokes, okay? They're jokes. They're jokes. We need to take a break right here. When we come back, we're going to shift everything over to the blockchain and this underlying technology. It's not necessarily what you think, and it could be the future of everything. And I've got so many questions here, Riz. Everybody wants to go through a transaction from beginning to end. What's going on there? Are we supporting heroin dealers? What is the future of cash? It's like, is there air? Well, we'll talk about all of that with Riz when we come back. It's Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. It's a Bitcoin crypto blockchain evening right here on the Game Changer Network. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires. This year we've experienced more than our fair share. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and last month I decided to make sure my family does not have to worry about food should we get caught in a real emergency situation. Introducing Numana, a healthy, storable product that tastes so good that you'll want to eat it every day instead of just during those times of duress. All Numana products have a 25-year shelf life, are MSG and GMO-free, no preservatives, and are made in America. With the Numana pack in your home, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you've protected your family. Not only have I tasted and tested, I own it. Now you can too. Just click on the Numana banner on JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code Jimmy when you order. In addition to a discount, we'll send you an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Seriously, go Beckley Tappy.
Do you worry a lot? Whether you're a college student, busy professional, parent, or grandparent, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in 1 to 2 weeks. Call 1-800-758-8746 or calmandclever.com.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. You know, there's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Riz Virk. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Okay, welcome back. Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Riz Virk. We're doing it all tonight. Just covered Bitcoin, cryptos. We're going to jump into blockchain right now. And Riz is much smarter than me. I've been outspoken and interested in Bitcoin since the very beginning of Fade to Black. This goes back 4 or 5 years for me, but before anybody even knew what Bitcoin was. And Riz, back then, they were like, why are you talking about Bitcoin, man? I want to talk about UFOs. But I'm fascinated with the technology. So let's go here. When it comes to blockchain, we're going to get into the technology and what it means, but are all cryptos created equally? Right now, there's 1,000 different tokens out there being traded in the markets. So are they? Why is there an advantage over one than the other? Are they all the same?
Yeah, so the answer is no, they're not all the same. They're fairly different, and so as I mentioned, the two biggest cryptocurrencies and the two kind of best known blockchains are Bitcoin and Ethereum. And the Ethereum blockchain is one that was created so that you could actually not just transfer Ether, which is the cryptocurrency in that blockchain, but you could have logic and you could write code and everyone would agree on what the code should do. So it becomes like a distributed computer where you could say, I'm going to put this Ether in here in this contract, and it only gets released when certain conditions are met. So it's a fascinating subject. Smart contracts is a fascinating subject. But what happened with that was that opened up the possibility of different types of tokens. And so, you know, there are many different types of tokens coming on the market now, and some of them are built on the Ethereum blockchain, and some of them are built on completely new blockchains. During the intro, you mentioned that that I was involved in a company called Theta Labs, and Theta is creating a decentralized video streaming platform, and they're using a new blockchain to do it. So the idea is that today, you probably know this a little bit from broadcasting your show, but when you send video, there's a lot of data being sent out. And companies like Akamai and Amazon, they have what are called content distribution networks, and they have points of presence in different locations, and it's very expensive for somebody who wants to stream a lot of video.
Physical servers. Physical servers.
Or servers in the cloud, which are still physical servers somewhere.
Right.
And they try to place them closer so that the quality is good. But for example, in Brazil, you have lots of esports fans who might be watching a broadcast of League of Legends. And these CDNs don't always have points of presence there. So what we're doing at Theta is we're building a way so that people can use their spare CPU and their spare bandwidth, particularly gaming PCs, to relay the video streams to people in their neighborhood. So it's what we call the last mile problem. So this is an example where blockchain is being used to create a completely new decentralized system for sending out entertainment. And then the coin in that system can be used for people to pay for content. It can be used to pay for the servers themselves. So if you're providing your CPU and your internet bandwidth, which I happen to know is pretty high bandwidth from our conversation earlier, then you could be mining these tokens, and the tokens have some economic value, so it's compensating you for running your servers. I mean, you could visualize a decentralized Netflix where anybody can upload content, and there's no way that it could be censored by YouTube or by any site because it's out there with the set of decentralized servers. And so that's an example of a new protocol and a new blockchain that has an application that's using the ideas from Bitcoin and Ethereum and existing blockchains in a new way. So that's one example.
Now, if this can, so you have the underlying technology of the blockchain and what it can do in different applications, not necessarily as a money or an investment, but you're using the technology for something else. I read an article today that was excellent about a blockchain registration peer-to-peer for fine art. And so you have a Picasso, right, which is subject to fraud. People recreating the same painting and selling it on the black market. Well, you have the original, and it gets registered into this blockchain. And now if you are out there and you want to buy, somebody comes to you and says, hey, I got this Picasso. Oh, really? Cool. And then you find out that isn't the original. The original is registered in the blockchain to somebody else, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you can use this distributed ledger, if you will, which is the blockchain, to keep track of anything that everybody needs to agree on. So that's a great use case, I think. Another use case that I don't think anybody's done yet, but I know as an author myself, I had to, in my book, I was quoting other books, and I couldn't figure out who had the rights to this particular quote. And sometimes the original publisher had no idea because they had been sent to some publisher in the UK who then, sent it to some publisher in Ireland. And it was very hard to track this down because there was no place where it was tracked. Right. And so, this idea of having a database that everybody can agree upon, that's what a blockchain fundamentally is. And that no one person can corrupt that, right? The idea is it would take more, have to have more than 51% of the consensus in any of these blockchains. And to do that, there's this thing called proof of work, which I talked about earlier, and there's a new idea called proof of stake, which some of the newer blockchains are using, where you have to own a majority of the coins in the system, and it would be more expensive for you to go buy those than the benefit you would get by trying to cheat. And so it's all built on this idea of assuming that people are trying to do bad things, and so you create a trustless system where you don't have to trust anyone else, but everyone together agrees on who owns this painting, for example.
Well, and now the blockchains, like for Bitcoin, as you and I are talking, it is now bigger than it was when we started the show. And the amount of processing power to complete a transaction as each second and minute goes by gets more and more complex, hence mining, the amount of servers that are needed, the amount of electricity that is needed. The audience needs to understand what we're talking about here. So if it gets bigger and bigger, is the system going to bog down? If we go, and I'm talking about the internet in general and servers, well, if we go back to like Kim.com, right, or BitTorrent or any of these other peer-to-peer file sharing databases that were out there at one point, you remember Kim.com or whatever was using up like 10% of the internet.
Yeah, and so, that's true as files get bigger and bigger. So, I mentioned the Theta blockchain, which I'm involved with earlier. Turns out that about 60% of internet traffic today is video traffic.
That's right.
And so, you got Netflix and Hulu, and you got these guys streaming everywhere, right? And it turns out the projections are it's going to be up to like 80% in a few years of video. So that's what's bogging down the internet right now. I mean, the blockchain data, yes, it's big, and it gets bigger all the time. But compared to the amount of video data, it's not that big. That said, this is one of the criticisms of Bitcoin in particular is that the mining, it's getting harder and harder, and there's so much money to be made that more and more people are using lots of electricity in their miners to do this, and that it's basically not a climate-friendly situation because you're actually using so much electricity, which is still generated by plants. Coal plants or whatever power plants that you have out there.
Yeah, if you do a Bitcoin transaction for $100 or one for $100,000, same amount of electricity for that transaction.
Right, because they both get recorded into the next block of transactions, and so that's why smaller transactions don't always make sense in Bitcoin anymore, given what the price is and how it works. That's why I was saying it's not used so much as a medium of exchange for buying little things like a pizza anymore, although you certainly could. But that's where other blockchains come in. And so other blockchains were invented to be more efficient than the Bitcoin blockchain because that was the first one. I mentioned Ethereum, which does, I think, every 15 seconds a new block gets generated. So there's a lot of Ethereum blocks generated since we started this conversation. There's Litecoin, which, is supposed to be more efficient as well. But that's where it's an evolving field, but this idea of proof of work, which is what Bitcoin and a lot of the existing blockchains are built on, it means you have to do lots of work to mine a block, and that's what uses electricity. Some of the blockchains, newer ones, are switching to proof of stake, which does not use it's like 1,000 times less, because it's not about how much work you do, it's about how many cryptos or ether you put into the system, and you have to deposit them. And then you can have a vote on what happens. And so it's much more efficient. And so that'll evolve over time as well. I mean, again, I have to emphasize that we're still, in my opinion, in the early days of cryptocurrency and blockchain. And there'll be lots of interesting innovations that come out in the years ahead that will make it much more efficient, much more secure, and hopefully eventually more mainstream.
Now, I'm going to suggest something now. I would like your take on this. But this is where my mind goes, and it's going here. The more that I've analyzed Bitcoin, mining, the technology, the processing power, and how it can eat up, like you're talking about, spare bandwidth. Is the future, could there be, and you and I can start this company together or maybe get this technology down, but would there be in the future on cell phones and on computers, laptops, a separate blockchain processor?
Well, there could be. I mean, if you look at Bitcoin blockchain today, it used to be that people would mine it using their computer CPU.
Right.
But what happened was that was relatively slow, and so people switched to using GPUs, which was faster. Now, most Bitcoin mining is not done with your computer CPU or GPU. It's done using what are called ASIC, or application-specific chips that people have created because they're really fast just in mining Bitcoin, because they're really fast at solving that cryptographic hash puzzle that I talked about earlier. And so there are circuits built specifically for this. So I think over time there will be different types of chips and boards built for mining different types of blockchains. And so that is happening in the marketplace. And so, I think it'll shake out depending upon which cryptos and blockchains are more popular. So I think as a general idea, it's a good one. It's already happening. But I think we'd have to look at the specifics of, okay, which cryptos can be mined using which types of CPUs, GPUs, or new chips, if you will, that you could embed.
Yeah, when I had read last month that over in Russia, two of these crypto mining farms, both two different ones, actually bought their own electrical plants.
Yeah, I could see that. Because they have usually farms of servers, but they're not servers in the traditional sense of the way we think about them. They're just these ASIC boards, and they have lots and lots of them that are sitting there, and so it becomes expensive, from the electricity perspective. So it's probably may even be more efficient for them to be generating their own electricity. So I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when we're dealing with the blockchain, explain the best that you can through a transaction, what goes where and how the transactions are verified.
Sure. So I'll try not to get a little too technical because there's a lot of technical details. They're all available on the internet. You can see the protocols and the algorithms. But, what I found interesting about Bitcoin, and this is also true of other blockchains, but each one's a little bit different, right? So in Bitcoin, what I found is that a transaction is really moving Bitcoin from one wallet to another, right? So that's what a transaction is. So it says, I own wallet A, you own wallet B, I would like to send, this number, 0.5 Bitcoin, from wallet A to wallet B. And so you have some software that allows you to do that, and it'll ask you for your private key. That's what makes it so that only you can transfer money out of your wallet. If somebody else had your private key, then they could just transfer the money to their wallet, and then you'd be SOL, right? But it's the private keys that make this whole thing work because it's based on certain types of cryptography. And so that transaction says go from wallet A to wallet B, and it gets broadcast out there to the network. And then there are these miners who are sitting there listening for these transactions. And so they try to basically say, okay, let me get a bunch of these transactions together and let me see if they fit into a block. Okay, now, in the early days of Bitcoin, you can look at the blockchain, by the way. There's a lot of websites like blockchain.io or Etherscan for Ethereum where you can see every single transaction ever done in the blockchain. You can go right back and see where did they get their Bitcoins from, going all the way back. So if you look at transactions from like 2009 or 2010, there's only like a few transactions per block. You might have 10 transactions. Today, it's typically like 1,000 transactions per block, because there's a maximum size in the Bitcoin protocol. Mm-hmm. And so you put all those together, and then you try to add what's called a nonce, which is a random number, and you run the whole thing through this hash function, and you see if the hash is less than some target difficulty. It's basically a puzzle you can only solve by trying lots of numbers. That's why it takes work. So somebody in the network will find a set of transactions and a random number that generates a hash that solves the problem. Whoever does that, they mine the block, and then they share that block with everybody else, and everybody else agrees. Yes, that solves that cryptographic problem, and that block gets added to the blockchain. And then as more people verify that, that's when your Bitcoin becomes available in wallet B. So wallet B can't access it right away until the transactions are mined and put into a block and verified by a number of miners.
How long does it typically take?
Well, so the difficulty gets adjusted so that in Bitcoin it happens every 10 minutes. In Ethereum, I think it happens every 15 seconds. It's different for different blockchains. And so this gets back to the architecture of the blockchain and what is the nature of the puzzles that the computer has to solve.
I've heard talk, I read a lot of forums, and I've heard talk about blockchains getting up to, 5 or 10,000 transactions a second. Do you see that as ever being possible?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are new blockchains all the time. And you mentioned earlier, there's like, thousands of cryptos out there now, cryptocurrency. Each currency either it runs on existing blockchain, like the Ethereum blockchain, or it runs on a new blockchain. And so when people want really fast transactions, they have to architect a new blockchain. And I mentioned our video streaming network with Theta earlier. Video streaming is very computationally intensive, right? And things have to happen fast in order to get the stream.
Right.
And so in that case, we're building a new blockchain specifically for that because it has to be fast and it has to have higher performance than, waiting 10 minutes for each block to be mined as in Bitcoin. So it really depends on which blockchain you're talking about. I don't know specifically, 1,000 per second, 5,000 per second. I mean, it's definitely possible, but different blockchains have different targets. And so, that's why there's so many. Now, it'll shake out. In the early days of PCs, there were lots of different computers and operating systems, and eventually they consolidated, and that'll happen eventually, with these different cryptos as well. I like to use the example of the early days of the auto industry. I grew up in Detroit, and back then, Oldsmobile, Buick, Dodge, these were all separate companies started by separate entrepreneurs, right? And eventually it consolidated to the big three automakers, and now we have Tesla and others. But same thing with crypto. I mean, it won't consolidate to three, but it'll consolidate from thousands to a certain number that have been successful at how they're used. This is the important point. What is the utility of the blockchain? And that's, I think, where the interesting applications will be moving forward, is you can have different applications that need a distributed database. I mean, some things don't need a distributed database, so there's no reason you need to do it as a new blockchain.
Well, mistakes happen. What happens if a block gets corrupted?
Well, this is where, because it's not in any one place, right? If the block gets corrupted, then the other people will be able to see that it's corrupted because the cryptographic hash will no longer produce the result that you thought it would. So the way these hash functions work, if you change one bit, in a string of, say, 256 bytes, which is, a much longer string, you could change one character or one bit and you'll get a completely different result. So that's actually why hash functions were invented initially, was so you could verify the integrity of the data to say, yep, this data is exactly the same as it was when it was created. There's no bits or bytes here that are wrong,
Right. Well, okay. Now, let's say everything is verified. Transaction is verified. It gets added into the ledger. Yep. At that point into the blockchain, has there been something that has gone wrong?
Well, this is why you can't just add it to the blockchain yourself, right?
No, I'm saying it's verified. It's verified, but once it's added to the blockchain as a transaction,
it's verified by, let's say, 20 different servers,
right?
At that point, they all have copies of it, right? And then eventually 200 servers or 2,000 servers all have copies of that. Now, it's possible they could get corrupted in any one of those, right? But it's unlikely that it would get corrupted in 51% of those, potentially, right? So that's why you have this kind of fail-safe method of saying all these guys have to agree. Now, there is this idea of forks, right? Which, you could say is kind of down this line where there's something called Bitcoin Cash, which is a fork of the original Bitcoin blockchain. So they took block number, I don't know what the block number was. Let's say it was block number 50,000, right? Mm-hmm. Or 500,000, I think is a more likely number. And they said, from this point forward, we're going to have different rules for how these blocks are assembled. They wanted to have a more efficient system that would happen more quickly, for example, like you talked about. So the 501,000 block, 500,001 block in Bitcoin Cash is different than the 500,001 block in Bitcoin. And then you can think of it as a fork in the road, and then they kind of process on. And now they're two completely different cryptocurrencies, even though they started with the same fork. And they started with the same trunk, and then they forked. So that's, people may hear about that in the news, about forking different blockchains. That's what that means.
Now, how big of a file is the entire blockchain for Bitcoin?
Well, so it's gotten pretty big over time. And so that's why they have full nodes, and then they have what are called simple payment verification nodes. And so the full blockchain is, I don't know, it's in the gigabytes at this point, I think. Each block is like 1 megabyte, I think. So you can add that up and multiply it. I think the highest block number now, you can go to one of these sites like blockchain.info, and they'll tell you what the latest block number is. It's 512,215, right? That's the number of blocks in the blockchain right now.
500. Okay, so each one of these mining servers, right, these ASIC servers that we were just talking about, for lack of a better word, we'll call it a mining ASIC server. Is the blockchain existing on each individual server?
Well, that was the original idea.
Right.
But what happened was because solving the mining pool problem is so hard, there's this idea of mining pools now. So one computer would have the whole blockchain, and it would send out, let's say, to 1,000 different computers, aspects of the problem to solve. And each computer would try a different number because it's all about trying random numbers. And so every one of those ASIC chips doesn't need the whole blockchain. It just needs to try these random numbers to see if they work, right? So verifying a cryptographic hash is actually really quick and easy. You can say, if I got this string and I hash it, this is what I get as the output. Pretty easily. You don't need a lot of processing to do it. And so most of these ASIC chips are just doing that with a bunch of random numbers. They're not necessarily mining and keeping track of the whole blockchain. The full nodes, the Bitcoin servers that are controlling these mining pools, they're doing all of that. And you don't need all of that on your computer to use blockchain, spend your Bitcoin. You just need what's called a simple payment verification server, which is a much smaller set. It's like 80 bytes of a header in each block.
Right. Which makes sense. And this is one of the most fascinating parts of this too. When I read about how the queue is, you're waiting for, your transit, and there's others that are in front of you. There are some of you that are behind you in the line, right? Yep. How is that determined? And what if they happen at the same time? And is this happening all around the world? When I picture a queue, it's just like you're in line at McDonald's, right? It's the very same thing. Where is this accumulated?
Well, it's happening everywhere now, right? Now that Bitcoin has gotten popular, that was part of what happened in the last year because the price rose, more people started to do mining. So I would say there's Bitcoin mining going on in pretty much every, at least developed country in the world, and maybe even in many less developed ones where electricity might be cheaper. And sometimes people are moving their farms to places like Quebec where electricity is cheaper, for example. So it's not any one place. That's the power of the network, right? When they first, Satoshi Nakamoto did the first Bitcoin server, he was just mining, there was one server just mining this stuff, right? Now there's so many. That's why it becomes harder for governments to stop it. It's kind of like they're playing whack-a-mole. Like what happened in 2013, I told you there was a crash. Mm-hmm. It was like the Chinese government clamped down, right? Well, then turns out, the Japanese exchanges have become some of the biggest exchanges. And in the last year, I think Japan's become the first or second or third biggest market. Now there's Korean exchanges. The Russians are trying to clamp down on Bitcoin. The American government wants to regulate it, and they want to have all these SEC restrictions, and the IRS wants to clamp down. So, but it's become so big now, this is my personal opinion, that it's this kind of game of whack-a-mole where all the governments of the world are trying to squash this thing, but it may have gotten beyond them, That's my opinion.
It's fascinating to me. So is everything then, does it have a timestamp?
Yeah, everything has a timestamp. So when the block is generated, in the block header, there's a timestamp that says this is when I generated this block, and this is the random numbers I used, and then here's the 1,000 transactions in this block. So you can look at the block, and your particular transaction, let's say I sent you some Bitcoin or you sent me some, will be in that specific block, and you can go look it up, and you can see exactly when it happened.
So there's no way that somebody can cut in line.
No, it would. Well, okay, I want to say there's no way. If somebody were controlling more than 50% of the computing power in the world, it's possible that you could create your own fork of the Bitcoin blockchain, or you could go and say, you know what, these are not the right blocks. But the way that it was constructed was that you would have to go back and reconstruct all the blocks, from 250,000 to, let's say today it's at 500,000. So if you wanted to go back and try to cheat and say, okay, that money didn't go from Riz to Jimmy, it went from Jimmy to Riz, right? Last year, you would have to go back to block number 250,000, and then you would have to generate 250,001, 250,002. Meanwhile, the current blockchain is at 512,000. You'll never catch up unless you have more than 50% of the computing power in the world.
I get it.
So that's why. Yeah. It's hard. It. Not that it can't be done, but it's very unlikely.
I just sneezed. That's what that was. Riz heard it. The rest of the world did not. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Now, when we come back, we're going to stay on this. There's still lots of questions to be answered. But now I want to open up the phone lines. But how the blockchain can be used for everything else. Think about that. We'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. This is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Salt Lake City, Utah. Van Buren, Arkansas.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRARadio.com.
Hello, Fadernauts. This is Jimmy Church, and I'm introducing New Pharma, a company whose products are based on science. Human function based on the endocannabinoid system, or ECS. New Pharma firmly believes in this science, and their research indicates that support of the ECS provides the beneficial effects for a healthy lifestyle. New Pharma's science includes relief capsules for pain relief, sleep capsules, which are natural support for occasional sleeplessness. Foundation is support for your ECS, and Fit capsules support your active lifestyle. Just click on the banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code F2B for a 33% discount on all of their products. Or visit newpharma.com for all of the knowledge on the science. That's GNUpharma.com. Go Beckley Tappy. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Tappy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Riz Virk. Bitcoin, crypto, the blockchain. Trying to get rid of some of the urban legend and get down to the mystery behind all of this. I'm starting to understand it. I get it. Riz, a couple of questions here. Oh, by the way, phone lines are open, 323-825-5045. 323-275-9695. I've opened up everything right now. This comes in from Australia. Blockchain this, forking that. Sounds like a pain in the arse. Why bother with this type of currency? Again, Riz, is it a currency? Is it an investment? Or is it the blockchain technology that we should be most interested in?
It's an interesting question. And I know we're getting a little technical in some of the explanations here, but you kind of have to because it's a technology-based solution. And so, I think long-term, the technology is more interesting than the currency, even though, most of the focus in the press has been on, how much is Bitcoin worth? Is it a bubble? Are there Bitcoin millionaires? Like this kind of a thing. But this idea that no one central authority might control something, but it can be agreed upon in a distributed way is an important concept in computer science. And I think that's where, a lot of these new blockchains are innovating in how they do that, how fast they do that, how efficient it is, how the blockchain works. So, you could go back to the internet, and the internet was a set of these domain name servers, and why bother? Well, eventually the web came along on top of the internet protocols. And, if you look at the version 1 of HTML, it was a very simple protocol. I mean, didn't even have images, if I recall. It was just a bunch of text. It's called a hypertext, linking protocol or markup language. And so we couldn't imagine back then what you could do with a web. I mean, today, here we are listening to Fade to Black from a web page in many cases, or from a mobile app. Right? Those were all built on top of internet protocols and infrastructure, and that's why blockchain is important. There'll be new applications that are built on top of blockchain that don't require, these centralized servers. And so, I know, censorship is a topic that's probably interesting to this audience. Mm-hmm. And, within a blockchain, nobody can censor you because, it has to be done by consensus of a majority of people. And that's, I think, the real long-term interesting aspect of this blockchain technology.
Well, will blockchain be the underlying tech in just about every website, whether you're a wedding photographer or cars or beer, whatever? Would it eventually just be the underlying technology of everything?
Well, it could be, but not everything is well suited for blockchain. But if you think about it, there's a website that in the UFO world you probably know. I think it's called theblackvault.com, right, where they have thousands of documents up there. Right. Documents leaked by the government. Well, what if that server is shut down? What happens to those documents? Right? Now, if that was implemented in a blockchain, in a peer-to-peer system, then you could never, those documents would never be deleted. They would always be available. So I think there are applications for which blockchain makes sense, where you need a distributed architecture. And there may be other applications, where you don't, like your website to pay your parking ticket, right? That can be over your local government's website. So that might still be a centralized website. But I think there are lots of interesting applications that open up when you do this decentralized way of looking at the world.
Well, okay, so blockchain eliminates DirecTV, right? Or whatever. Yeah. Let's, and right. we're starting to, if the application is used correctly and accepted, it still has to be, normalized and accepted and everybody understands it. But if it goes that route, then what happens to it's almost like the singularity or AI, if in robotics, right? So robotics take over the car industry, there's no more workers. So if that happens also, then what happens to these big companies and the employment there if everything is just run on everybody's servers?
Well, it would be a kind of a different world. And just like, today more people are watching entertainment, in their apps and through Netflix in many cases than traditional TV, right? There's more and more cord cutters who are basically not subscribing to cable where you have to have all of these channels. And, I wrote a blog post about how blockchain could kill Netflix and cable. It's available on my blog over at Medium, which is medium.com/@Riz Stanford. And, my point was that right now you've got these gatekeepers who decide what entertainment you can watch and what you can't. And in a blockchain-enabled world, you would be able to do that. Anybody could put up content in certain channels. Anybody could create a channel. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily, every channel is going to be seen, but it creates that opportunity to do that. But there's still, people still have to create the content. Mm-hmm. You may still have people that need to aggregate the content. You still have to build like the front end for people to see it. So there's still plenty of jobs and employment. I don't think it would be, necessarily that you're going to see these big companies disappear overnight, right? But over time, just like with Amazon and the web, there are a certain number of traditional businesses that may need to slim down to accommodate this new model. I mean, I happen to know that all the big entertainment companies are looking at this space. I mean, they're just getting used to having OTT apps, which is like your CBS app on your phone where you watch Star Trek Discovery. They're just getting there. They're seeing this new thing, blockchain, coming down the road, and I think it'll take a while before they adjust and before people accept it. I mean, it's relatively new, as I've said.
Yeah, well, Netflix and Apple and iTunes, put out of business Blockbuster and the video stores, gone, and eliminated the CD market and record stores. They no longer exist. They eliminate. That's it. It's gone. And we have certainly survived that, and we figured out a way to get through it. It was pretty shocking for most. But if we turn around and start doing this without having solutions to the future, and I'll give you a perfect example. We're talking about Netflix right now and the blockchain, and your article is amazing, and I recommend everybody to go and read it. We have the links up there in Twitter for that, and you can access all of Riz's stuff through jimmychurchradio.com. But is this Netflix also funds content creation? Okay? Stranger Things, or what, look at how many movies and television series that Netflix has created. The money came from Netflix. Netflix goes away, and companies like that, or HBO, or Showtime, or DirecTV. Now, will the blockchain, if I want to create a new TV series, I don't go to Netflix. Now, where do I go for the funding for my new TV series? The producers, the writers, the content that is in the structure inside of Netflix. It's not inside of the blockchain. How do you overcome that?
Sure. Well, if you look at it, people were worried, with Netflix and people cutting cords, that the studios, wouldn't be able to finance TV shows, right? I mean, Netflix didn't start off funding content. It was a distribution mechanism. It became a new pipe through which to send. And then they started within the last X years to fund great shows like Stranger Things. I mean, today there are more great shows than there have been really at any time in history.
No doubt.
And part of it has been because of the technology for Amazon and Netflix to send these directly to people in HBO. And so, a change in the system from the old way of doing things to the new way doesn't necessarily mean there's less content. In fact, it usually means there's more content out there. Now, the way it could work in the blockchain and the way that I kind of envision it, and this is, one of the applications we want to build on top of the Theta video streaming protocol, is that you would have a crypto coin that can be used to fund content. So basically, you could say, okay, I would like to create this type of a TV show, right? And then people can pre-order it using these tokens in this new blockchain. And so you could fund a good part of it from getting those pre-orders and the tokens. And then you could use traditional sources for other pieces of it. So, of course I said, blockchain will kill Netflix and cable, but, it's going to take a long time and there'll be a hybrid model before that happens. Just like with Blockbuster, Blockbuster survived till I don't know, was it 2008, 2009? I remember still having a Blockbuster. So it took 10 years for Netflix to kill Blockbuster, and Netflix hasn't killed HBO or the other guys yet. So these things take time, but there is this possibility. So what's different about blockchain is that it also creates this economic incentive. That's what the token does. The token allows advertisers to pay for free content. So there's going to be a lot of free content on blockchains that people can watch, like the video streams, and advertisers can just put tokens in the system and they'll go directly to the content creator. Right? You don't have to have the middleman of the studios, the distributors, the networks, and all of those. That's the long-term vision. Of course, it's going to take time to get there. But I think that is an interesting aspect of it, the funding aspect, because cryptocurrency and blockchain are tied together pretty closely right now. So you can have an economic piece of this and provide incentives for different players to do different things. And that was never really present with technology before.
So cash can never go away. The dollar can't go away because, and I want to understand this correctly, all cryptocurrency, no matter what, is propped up by fiat, by dollars. Right? No matter what. So the exchanges, right? The exchanges open and you've got a new cryptocurrency and it's called Riz, Riz tokens. People are going to go and purchase those tokens with dollars, right? And so these...
Well, yes and no. So that's how it started out, right? So if you wanted to get Bitcoin... when I started to get Bitcoin, I had to pay US dollars for it. That was the only way to do it. Now, because there's so many currencies out there, let's say there's a Fade to Black token, right?
Right.
You could buy it with, most likely, you would buy that new token with Ethereum or Bitcoin.
Which still started, but if you go back, it's still dollars in the front. It's still dollars in the front.
Yeah, you would still need to buy your Ether or your Bitcoin with dollars. And then once it's in the crypto world, there's this possibility that you would just trade it for different cryptocurrencies and never change it back unless you needed to go buy something, right?
Well, okay, so now we have a new blockchain, and it's called Fade to Black Studios, and we've got a new TV show that's coming up, and we've got the Fade to Black crypto, right, that's being traded inside of our little Fade to Black world. I'm all cool with that. And then we've generated so many Fade to Black tokens, and those are being generated, and then that is going into our new TV series. But I've still got to somehow pay the actors. I've got to feed them. I've got to the writers. Yep. I've got to rent a camera equipment. I've got to get a studio. I got to do all of that. Ultimately, especially in the near term, in the next 5, 10, 20 years, is still dollars.
Absolutely. In the next 5, 10, 20 years, absolutely. You're going to have to pay them with US dollars. So, but what would happen is that your audience might buy your Fade to Black tokens using Ether or Bitcoin, just because it's really easy to transfer that and get the new tokens. They would use those tokens for X, Y, or Z to watch this particular show or to subscribe or to get rid of ads or whatever those tokens are used for. And then you would take that Ether that they've given you or the Bitcoin and transfer that to US dollars, which there's a pretty liquid market. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars of Bitcoin and Ether being traded every day right now. Mm-hmm. Hundreds of billions, right? So, and that's just getting bigger all the time. So you would be able to sell that using an exchange. And again, more and more of these exchanges are tied into the existing system. So you would still have to pay taxes on it, right? All that stuff. All that infrastructure is starting to happen. Yeah.
Well, okay. Now let's say that this plays out. And I'm very confident in the blockchain technology and what it can, to me, I think you can apply it to just about anything. If you have a company or an idea or something There's a way to tie in blockchain to you and to make it work. For a lot of it doesn't even have to be tokens. It could be a lot of different things. So, but for all of this to work, this $11,000 Bitcoin or $800 Ethereum is not going to work. It needs to be like $1. It needs to be $100 or $10. But an $11,000 Bitcoin is fictitious. It's fictitious. I called it, and I want your comment on this. I said this a couple of months ago, and I made this analogy, and they just brought it up here in Twitter, that I compared Bitcoin to Beanie Babies, right? Beanie Babies were just a stuffed animal full of beads, right? But suddenly some of them were worth $1,000. What? $1,000 for why? Because somebody said it was worth $1,000, so the next person wanted to pay $1,100 for it. Bitcoin is the same thing in that there's nothing propping up Bitcoin, but if you use it for the technology, transferring money, a decentralized system, the blockchain, I get that. I understand that. But it should just be easy, and there shouldn't be a value to it. In other words, it's not an investment. It's a machine.
Well, it depends how you look at it, right? I mean, Beanie Babies lasted for what, a year or two, right?
Don't remind me. Do not remind me.
Right, but Bitcoin has been around for 10 years now and probably will be around for many more years. And you couldn't say, okay, I'd like to get 0.01 Beanie Babies, right, or 0.3 Beanie Babies to buy this thing. Whereas with Ether, even though it's at $800, you can send 0.1 Ether, which would be $80, or 0.01 Ether, which would be $8 to somebody. And that's the idea of cryptocurrencies. You can divide it. So it doesn't matter. I mean, even if Bitcoin is at $1 million, you can still get, $1. Now, with today's blockchain, that it doesn't make a lot of sense to transfer $1. A Bitcoin, the transaction costs would eat it up, right? But you can envision other blockchain and other currencies. And so, that's part of the perspective I'd like to provide is that, yes, Bitcoin is the biggest and oldest cryptocurrency. It was really the first one that became popular. Ether is the second biggest. But 10 years from now, who knows? We may have much more efficient cryptocurrencies where you can trade and use it for payment and in a much faster way.
Well, so back to my question, though. What makes Bitcoin an $11,000, $5,000, $10,000 value when there's 1,000 cryptocurrencies out there that are exactly the same thing? I mean,
what makes the U.S. dollar worth what it is?
Well, us.
It's the number of people that are willing to use it and pay for it, right?
Everybody. So look at XRP right now. It's trading for 96 cents.
Right.
Right. So I mean that XRP to me makes sense. It's $1, right? It makes sense to me if it's a mechanism and it's a method of transaction eliminating.
Well, but let me push back on that, Jimmy, because the amount that it's trading for isn't really what matters, right? It's how many are out there and how divisible is it? Just like when Google stock goes up to 1,000. They can split the stock and make it 100, but when they split the stock, you're gonna have 10 times as many shares. So Google stock at 100 with 10 times as many shares is no different than Google stock at 1,000 with 10 times less shares. So just because the price of a currency is at $1 or 50 cents or $200, that's not really the issue because you can subdivide. You can send 0.01 of anything, 0.02. All of these, it's how many are out there and what's the total market cap. I think that's, we'll decide the value of that.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm suggesting here. The value, it's the machine, it's the mechanism, it's the network, it's the logistics of moving all of this around and having the blockchain that is the technology, but making something, just because somebody says it's worth $11,000 doesn't make it so. But somebody else will say, okay, cool, I'll buy it for $11,001 because tomorrow somebody else is going to come along and buy it for me for $11,002. But there's nothing behind it except for dollars to begin with.
Right, but what makes Tesla a stock worth I don't know what it's trading at now, $200 or whatever it is. Right?
Well, they have a factory.
Right, but they have no
that's
profit.
what gives it
so
value.
what is the actual? The thing that makes it worth that is a set of expectations. And I go over this with entrepreneurs all the time when they start their companies. They say, how much is the company worth? Oh, my company's worth $1 million or $2 million. And I say, okay, well, what's the expectation for what your company will be worth in the future?
Right.
That's what the stock price is. The stock price of is Tesla worth whatever $200 billion? I'm making up numbers now. I don't know the exact. Or with losses, should it be worth zero? Well, it's worth what people expect it's going to be worth in the future. So it becomes a set of expectations. Fiat currency is like that too, right? People have lost confidence in currencies in the past, and currencies have gone away, and governments have had to issue new currencies. Luckily, we've been in a country where, the U.S. dollar has been relatively stable and has been the premier currency in the world. But 100 years from now, who knows if that's going to be the case? I'm just saying Bitcoin is not that different in some ways from fiat currency. There's nothing backing it up. People could start trading, the Chinese yuan, or there's a lot of stuff happening in China and Russia for getting rid of petrodollars and trading petroleum in those currencies. Who knows if the U.S. dollar is going to be worth what it is 100 years from now?
Now we've got to start to wrap up here. I've only got a few minutes left, but this question here is pretty interesting because if blockchain takes over, and that's it. Let's call you name the date. But the question is this: could the blockchain technology be used to distribute data in unfortunate ways, such as malware, or rapidly accelerate the singularity and uncontrollable artificial intelligence?
Well, I suppose if you look at a distributed artificial intelligence, right? And so now we're speculating.
Right.
Many of you may have seen the Terminator movies, and at the end of Terminator 3, they try to kill Skynet before it takes over the world, and they go and they delete the server. But Skynet still comes about. I don't know if you remember the end of that movie, and they said, well, because Skynet is software, not running on any one server in that case. So just deleting the server wasn't enough. So I suppose if you had a completely distributed AI that was running on lots of different computers, right, it would be very hard to shut it down. And so that could potentially lead to these kind of, AI scenarios. Now, I think the leap from that to that AI being able to do stuff in the real world, like in the X-Files episode last week, right, where the refrigerator was shooting ice cubes at Dana Scully, and
right,
being controlled. I think we're pretty far away from that kind of thing, but you could see. Personally, I think today's AI is kind of the second phase of AI. The first was the rule-based systems that happened in the 80s and 90s that didn't quite work out. Today's AI is based on data analysis, right? You just give it lots of data and you train it. I think there will need to be another phase of AI before we get to those kinds of nightmare scenarios and sentient AI and all of that. And perhaps that could be a distributed blockchain AI. I don't know. There are people like Elon Musk and others who say we have to be careful and put the stop on AI. That is maybe when you should be more worried about it, is when you have more distributed AI as opposed to AI running on a computer that you can just shut down.
Yeah, I look at it also. I'm excited about the blockchain technology, and I'll give you an example. I keep going back to car dealerships, but if you think about it, it could be the coolest reward incentive pool for employees. It could be used like that. It could be used on the inside of different systems. And the more you participate, the more you contribute, and the more you do this, then, it increases. And you can, like I said, the employee of the month, how do you get there? Well, you get there because you're doing this. It could be used for so many different applications. What about the school system, education system, grades, right? And if you think about it, it can be used across the system, and that's one of the very exciting parts to this.
Yeah, I agree. Anywhere where transparency is useful, right? Where everybody needs to be able to verify everybody else's work. So it reduces cheating in a way, right? I mean, today's financial system is very opaque. Like, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, between Wells Fargo and Bank of America and the Federal Reserve. It's not something that we can go audit, right, to find out, the whole financial collapse in 2008 was caused partly by certain practices. Do we know if those practices are going on or not? Only when you have more auditable systems where everybody can look at the data, can we all agree what's really happening and what isn't? So that's what I'm excited about. And yes, there are the nightmare Skynet scenarios, but I still think we're a little ways off from those.
Do you think that Goldman Sachs and Bank of America and Wells Fargo, Chase, would eventually adapt a blockchain foundation for the banking system because of exactly what we're talking about, transparency, ease of use, and the internet?
In the long term, yes. In the short term, they are very resistant. So I don't know if you remember this, but last year, Jamie Dimon, who was the CEO of, JP Morgan Chase, says Bitcoin is a fraud, and he was out there basically, pushing this. Meanwhile, the other day I was sitting next to somebody from JP Morgan Chase, and he said, oh yeah, we're definitely looking at blockchain inside JP Morgan, and many of us are trading it as well. So he's out saying one thing, and meanwhile they're looking in to figure out how they're going to use it, right? Because they're trying to push off this inevitability. But I think over time, if there's more shocks in the system, that's where this kind of distributed ledger becomes more important and interesting to get there. But in the short term, they're resisting it. But they are all looking at it. I think it was Credit Suisse First Boston or many of these banks, Deutsche Bank, where they have Bitcoin projects looking at how they might use it. Blockchain projects, not necessarily Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The blockchain technology, that and tokens and the creation, that's a positive. That is an amazing thing. It's an amazing technology. I just think the other warnings that are out there about Bitcoin, going back to its original value of zero, that it's been out there from so many different people. I'm not saying zero, but at least taking that part out of it, because you take the criminal element out of it. You're just using it for its technology. And I think that's where the future is. Riz, thank you so much, my friend. And you know what? We didn't get into tonight? We didn't get into, which I think is some of the most compelling. I can't believe the movie hasn't been made. But who is behind Bitcoin? Is it Nakamoto? Who is he? Is he fictitious? Is it a group of people? Is it, those two guys that are suing each other right now for $10 billion or whatever it is? Nakamoto's, for instance, he gets a guaranteed, 50,000, right? Bitcoins when it completes?
Yeah, so that's right. So I think that's a longer discussion. Nobody really knows the answer to who was that person. Was it a group of people? But there is a number of Bitcoins that are locked in the original wallet, right? So this is where you could see if Satoshi Nakamoto ever spent a single Bitcoin. Everybody would know. Now, if he started to spend and sell 50,000 Bitcoin, you would probably see the price of Bitcoin crash, right? And that's whoever he or they are. That's part of the reason why they haven't done that, right?
Do you think you've met Nakamoto and you didn't know it?
I don't know. I don't think that I have personally, but you look at the original paper, I mean, there was a lot of computer science in there, right? So there has been, speculation that it was actually a group of computer science professors who may have put it together.
Do you think it originated in Japan? And why do you think they picked that name?
That's a good question. I don't know if it originated in Japan. My guess is probably not. They probably used the Japanese name just because it sounds kind of futuristic and technical. But Japan is, as I said, now become the second, or maybe even first biggest market for Bitcoin. So I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Do you guys, over at MIT or Stanford, do you guys sit around and speculate who Satoshi is?
Sometimes we do, yeah.
Riz Virk, you're the best.
At MIT we do.
Yeah. Well, that's for another show at another time. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks for having me on again.
You're the best. Riz Virk, everybody. I'm going to take a quick break right here. I'll keep the phone lines open. I'm sorry if I've left you on hold, but I'm in the middle of a great conversation, and that's what happens. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll be right back.
Hey, what up, y'all? It's your girl, Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
So you went to dinner last night, you had your favorite pasta. Ugh. Or maybe you had a heavy, spicy meal and it left you. Ugh. Get the tea.com. Maybe you mowed down a huge steak and your plumbing is all plugged. Ugh. Get the tea.com. Our super strength tea will take care of your occasional. Ugh. It's all organic and non-GMO. Get rid of ugh. We have so many great supplements, but our super tea is number one. GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hey, can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, you know, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's a doctor-formulated daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at nature'syouth.com. nature'syouth.com. The holidays are coming. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Got to thank Riz Virk. It's not about, and I keep going back to this, and I was going back to this point so many times with Riz. It's not about Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin was first, so that's what everybody talks about. It's not about Bitcoin. It's about the technology behind Bitcoin and what the blockchain technology and the idea behind it means to when I'm talking about everything, it could be everything. And you look at fundamentally what it represents, then suddenly you've got a system that is cool. And just pull out an idea. Just right off the top of my head. I was just looking over here in the bunker. I'm not going to reach around for it. I got a box of Girl Scout cookies. Okay? Blockchain, Girl Scout cookies. Now think about that for a second. Right? So now you've got the Girl Scouts. And you get the knock at the front door. And the Girl Scout website has blockchain technology behind it, and all of I'm making this up on the fly. I have not put an ounce of thought to this, but this is an example of how rapid, how easy it can be applied. So the Girl Scout website's got blockchain technology behind it, and every Girl Scout in the country is registered, and every Girl Scout in the country has got a little digital wallet, and they've got Girl Scout tokens. And they're out and they're selling Girl Scout cookies, and then they go and they hang out on the website and they're talking about this and that and sales and whatever, and they're rewarded with Girl Scout tokens. And the more that they sell, the blockchain there, it gets registered and more tokens are created. Right? Think about that for a second. Right? And so the little Girl Scout is there and you're thinking, man, and she goes, the more I sell, the more I'm going to go hang out on the website, the more I'm going to interact with the other Girl Scouts across the country, and we're all supporting each other, and the blockchain is great, and I'm getting more Girl Scout tokens. So would you please buy some cookies from me today? Whatever. And again, if you think about it like that in those terms, it can go across the board. Education, grades. We were just talking about peer-to-peer and cheating, homework. Well, think about that. And you get rewarded for original essays and not something you copy and pasted off of the web, that you actually typed and wrote something original. Hey, think about that. And the rewards and the way that this can be applied. That is an application of blockchain that is incredible. And you could use it for anything like that. Now, going back to what Riz, by the way, let me do a couple of clicks here. Do that. Phone lines are open, 323-825-5045 or 323-275-9695. So there's that aspect of it. When he was talking about, a decentralized distribution system for video and eliminating the middleman, I think it's a great idea, and I think that the technology is going to push things like that into that direction, because it has happened with just because the success of Amazon or Netflix. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily Amazon Prime and video. I'm talking about Amazon shipping products to your door, right? This is something that it didn't eliminate Target. Target is still successful, right? There are still stores all over the country. You're still going to go, and I still do that. I still shop for groceries. I haven't yet had groceries delivered to the house, but I'll give you an example of where Amazon has succeeded. A couple of weeks ago, about a week ago, maybe a little longer, it got really cold here in the valley. It got really cold in Burbank. And so we went to turn on our heater, and it didn't work, right? Our heater. We're like, what the heck is going on here? So heating company comes out, call a buddy of mine that, owns a company. He comes out and he looks at it. Okay, man, you've got to get a new condenser, the box outside of the house with the fan and all of that. Really? Okay, so now we're going through, and today it still hasn't been replaced for a couple of reasons. Ordering the right one, getting it delivered, warranties, and getting all of that done. But it's ready, and now we're waiting for this guy to come out. But for the last 10 days, in that it has been really cold here in the valley. Last night it was like 40 degrees. Got no heater in the house. So Rita and I, last week, like 7 days ago, we went to Lowe's, we went to Home Depot, we went to Costco to go and buy a couple of portable heaters for inside of the house. Not that big of a deal, but just to make sure that we didn't get down to freezing temperatures at night inside of the house. Well, nobody had them for sale. Seasonal product. Went all over the place. Drove, wasted gas and time in the car, driving from store to store to get a couple of space heaters. Couldn't find them, right? So what do? Had to go home, jump on the net, went to Amazon, got the space heaters, clicked, done, delivered, $20 each, delivered the next day, free shipping. Now, think about what I just said for a second. Couldn't get them anywhere in the valley. Drove all over the place. Called around. No, it's a seasonal thing. We don't, call us in 9 months. Really? Couldn't get them. Amazon. Right there. Click, done. And the list of the space heaters there was 50 choices, all of them reasonably priced. How many do you want? Click quantity, single click purchasing, done. Be at your house tomorrow by 4 p.m. And we just wasted, and I'm talking about wasted gas, time, money, effort, pollution, everything that we did into the system to go and find this, but yet Amazon was right there. Should have done it to begin with. Now, that's an application of it right there. So I don't see, Target going away, but Target and Lowe's and Home Depot and Costco didn't have what I needed, but Amazon did at that moment and delivered to my door the next day. So think about that for a second. So there's that part. Blockchain eliminating anything else in the future, like maybe a Netflix or DirecTV. Could they actually go away? The possibility is there. There will be solutions to fix those issues, and they will eventually fix themselves, just like Blockbuster, Tower Video, the video stores, where you went for videotapes, then you went for DVDs. Remember, DVDs eliminated video. How many video tape players, recorders, are in garbage dumps around the world? Think about it. Every house had them at one point. Nobody's got them anymore. What happened to the videotape collections and all of the people that manufactured those? Well, and then now let's go to DVDs. DVDs have done the same thing, right? When was the last time you bought a CD? I don't even know the last time I bought a CD. It's a crazy concept. Let's go to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hi, Jimmy. It's Carla. How are you?
How are you? That's the question.
I'm good. A little bit snowed in, but it's supposed to start melting by the end of the week. So that's all good.
Do you have space heaters? Just kidding, Carla. Just kidding.
I have a space heater in my smoking porch.
Yeah, I know you do. It's kind of funny. We never, fans and things like that. We've got those, but when it came for the need of a space heater, what were we going to do? It was kind of weird. But Amazon to the rescue, right? So there you go. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, this thing about Bitcoin, I don't trust it.
Why not?
Well, number one, who made it? It could be AI.
Could be.
wants to get us all under control.
Right.
And then it can say who gets what.
Now, okay, so that's Bitcoin. But what about the technology underneath it, the blockchain? That's pretty cool.
Well, it is kind of cool, but what happens if we get that electromagnetic pulse from the sun, knocks out all the electricity, everybody's wallet's gone, then what?
Well, even if there wasn't Bitcoin, we would still be pretty screwed. Your ATM card's not going to work.
I know, and that's why cash is king.
Yeah, well, not cash, coffee. Coffee is going to be king. If it all goes down, I've got Fade to Black blend to trade. You know, and I'm serious about it. If you think about that, you know, what's going to be the number one and number two commodities in the world if we just had a massive EMP? I can tell you right now. Coffee and cigarettes.
Coffee and pot.
Yeah, no, cigarettes. Well, pot too. Pot will be up there, but cigarettes and coffee will be it. There's no question about there's no question about that. But yeah, I agree with you there. When we look at any of this, whether it's Bitcoin or credit cards, I'm always and the other day, Rita and I, and this is true. You have to think about this. Rita and I we go out to a restaurant, we valet, right? Go in, and Rita turns to me and she goes, "Do you have any cash on you?" I said, "For what?" She goes, "To tip the valet." And I went, "No, you don't have cash?" "No, I didn't. I didn't leave." Now think about this. This is what's interesting. Our car outside is now gone. The valet parked it, right? So now, and we're inside at the restaurant. Neither of us have cash. So I go up to the hostess. "You guys have an ATM?" "No, but there's a Chase Manhattan a couple of blocks down the road." Wait a minute. My car's gone. Now I walk a few blocks to get cash, right? Because I'm carrying credit cards. Right. And so even me, that I normally don't leave the house without cash, this time we both did, and now we're stuck. Is that valet outside going to take Bitcoin? No. Is he going to take?
No, but he would probably take one of those things that you got in your goodie bag.
Yeah, right. And so, do I have to drive to an ATM to come back? You know, what do you do? So I think we're years and years and years away from that. Certainly, at some point, I would be able to take out, you know, my cell phone and point it at his, and he takes a picture, and there's a thing there, and I can, you know, transfer money into his account.
Oh,
you know,
that's just creeping me out.
I know, but we're going to be right there. And then what if? See, this is Carol. Think about this for a second. You're walking down the road. I always use this analogy. You're walking down the road, you see this homeless guy, right? And he's down there. And you just like, you know, how do you help? And you don't have cash, right? Maybe there's no more cash. No more cash. Everything is just a cashless. And you turn and just go, "Dude, how did you get here?" "Well, last month they shut off my bank account." Right? You know, think about that. Yeah. The IRS or whatever. Now, you don't have a way to even give him money. Right? You follow what I'm saying? What if Big Brother, Skynet, just cut you off? Turned you off. And there's no way to do anything. I can walk him into this McDonald's and buy him food, but I'm certainly not going to be able to give him anything. That's a crazy, could it actually come down to something like that, where you just got turned off, right? Your number is turned off. You know, that's it. No cell phone, no nothing, no card. What if there was an off switch for people? And that's why I think cash still needs to be there. It just needs to be there. There needs to be that thing, that sense of exchange.
Or barter bucks.
Right. Well, something. You know. Something. Yeah. Something. You just reminded me. I'm not going to let my mind go there, but there are things out there with inside of companies and things where they have their own dollars, right? You know, to have fun with or whatever, and you know what I mean. There could be a sense of that out there where at least there would be some kind of monetary exchange that is outside of the electronic system. I don't know. The days of that, if it actually took over, I think would be really, really scary. You know, if you have a chip in your hand, and that's where, you know, you go and you're, or you know, that's why Apple Bucks, you know, the i you know, payment system, or you know, Android, where you're walking up and waving your cell phone and paying for it. The next step being, you know, a chip in your hand, which it's close. It's, you know, I would say that it's going to happen sooner or later, but that your whole existence is like that. You know, you're at a restaurant, you wave your hand, you're done, you're paid. You go and get gas, paid. You're getting groceries at the store, paid. Everything is like this, and then somebody decides to turn that chip off, right? Right? What are you going to do?
Well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to grow a whole bunch of pot.
Yeah.
I already know how to bake with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I already know how to smoke it. I'm going to find out how to make paper out of it. I'm going to use it for clothing. I'm going to use it for fuel. And that will be me. I'll be able to barter with my neighbors. I can give them everything: food, medicine, clothing, fuel, you know, and pot.
Yeah. I mean, do you think in these science fiction, apocalyptic, futuristic movies, you know, where there's no more computers and everything got fried out and everybody's out growing corn and, you know, back to community, that we could go through some cyclical thing like that where, you know, we take computers as far as we can and then one day it gets taken from us, and maybe we have the choices now inside of ourselves to not take technology so far, to be so dependent on it. You know, so dependent, because what if, right? I mean, what if? So if we only have to go back halfway, at least we still have an infrastructure that is there, and we don't have to go completely caveman.
Exactly. Well, you know, these young people too, if the power goes out and they're running a till, they just tell you, I can't give you change. I don't know how to make change. That's what they say.
Yeah, you know,
like, what?
One of my daughters, I'm not going to say who, but one of them showed us a math test from college the other day. Look at what I got. And I was like, man, that's pretty cool. She goes, and I didn't use a calculator. I'm like, well, wait a minute here. You know, I was just like, stop. But that was the requirement for this particular math test. And I'm talking about college. It was a college level, you know, a real deal math test. But they had to do it without a calculator. And I was thinking, that just flipped me out. That just stopped me right there. Well, okay, I got to wrap the show. Thank you so much, Carola, and be safe and be well.
I will, and you too, Jimmy.
Great phone call, and I'm so with you. She's absolutely right. You need to have that hardcore. Rita just says, "Are you going to say anything positive?" Yeah, I'm totally positive. Nothing out of my pockets but flowers. You know, when you talk to Riz, like we did tonight, and you start to understand what it's not so much the negative aspects of anything that we look at. Because if we look at the negative aspects of anything, and in this case we're talking about Bitcoin, and I tried to go there, but he's right. There's a negative aspect to everything. And if you look at the internet and what you can use it for the darkest and the wrongest of things, or you can use it for the right and the positive, like Fade to Black, right? This is a positive aspect to it. There's the dark side to the net. There's also going to be the dark side to anything else, the stock market, Bitcoin, whatever. But if you look at the underlying technology of the internet or the blockchain, distribution networks or Amazon or anything else that's out there, there's an absolute positive thing, and there's a way to just make it work for you and this community. And that's my take. And that's why you need somebody like Riz to come on this show and just set my mind straight. And he did just that. And that's why we do Fade to Black. So just thank you to everybody tonight Yeah, Riz Virk, the absolute very best. I can't wait to get him back on. There's so much more to talk about. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Camarion. Shows produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitoa, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew, the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. And syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast is only copyrighted 2018 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. Tomorrow night, right here, Matthew Ryan. Get ready for that. But until then, everybody be safe. Go Beckley Tepe.